Joe Paul.
Yes.
I want to welcome everybody out. Thanks for joining us. We've got a lot of things going on today, so I'd like to just kind of briefly go through that. But first, I'd like to just recognize we have Councilmember Burrell, Councilmember Joe Paul, Councilmember Saxton, and Councilmember Yeoman with us tonight. I haven't seen Councilmember Defoe yet, so we do have 4 of the 5 here. We've asked Councilmember Joe Paul if he'll lead us in a moment of silence and then the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, will you please join me in a moment of silence? Okay, thank you. If you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember. Let me just walk through this real quick with you so you understand how this is going to go tonight. First thing is we're going to do is we're going to enter a city council meeting. We will go through some action items as outlined in the schedule you have in front of you. Presentations, public comment period. We'll also do the city managers and council report during the city council. Then we're going to recess this council meeting. At that time, we're going to go ahead and go into a work session. We have some discussion items that need to be brought up. We're going to work out some discussion items in a work session. Then we're going to drop out of the work session into an RDA board meeting. There's some issues, particularly a CRA, we need to discuss and give public comment on that. And then after that's done, based on the outcome of that RDA board meeting, we'll come back into the city council meeting. And then we have an ordinance, if it's appropriate, we'll have an ordinance that needs to be addressed in the city council meeting. And then at that time, we'll go ahead and adjourn. So it's going to be a little mixed up than normal, but just be patient with us. We got some things we need to work through, so we'll go ahead and do that. So with the first, there is no consent items, council, and so the first action item was going to be the employee of the month, and we got some comments. Chief, you'd like to share your thoughts on this? Thank you.
Mayor, Council, Mr. City Manager, you're all aware of the efforts that our police officers put forth earlier this year on a fire. We nominated them for Employees of the Month. I'd like to have them come up if I could now. Sergeant Kyle Curtis. Let's see. Officer Preston Johnson. Officer Zach Jones. Officer Ryan Estes. Sorry, and Officer Cash Riggs. Mayor and Council, on November 4th of this month, or this year, witnesses reported a structure fire at 2075 West, 3875 South. Officers arrived on scene and observed significant flames and smoke coming from the garage and residential area on the east side of the residence. Officers pounded on the locked front door, which was immediately adjacent to the engulfed garage. One victim, an upstairs resident, was able to find the front door through the smoke due to the officers pounding on it and was helped from the residents at that location. A substantial amount of smoke was encountered, making it difficult for officers to see and breathe in their rescue efforts. Officers continued to look for other occupants and eventually located someone yelling at the west portion of the basement. A small window was broken using a window punch, and a very large rock was used to break the frame around the window. Officers then pulled 2 people from the basement window. This was a great collective effort by responding officers in saving these 3 individuals. You saw from the video from what the officers were able to see, but you couldn't see any of the officers. So we wanted to bring them here and give you a chance to see the people who were responsible for saving lives that night. These guys do a great job. They've been busy with it all summer long. Just great job. We're really proud of them and the job they do.
Okay. Well done. Well, I want to thank you for your comments. 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 I want to t
awesome job. We've had enough of this. I'm just wondering if we need to get them some turnouts as well, Chief.
Preston needs them. This is the 4th fire you've rescued people from? The 3rd.
He needs a Nomex police uniform.
Thank you. Council comments, questions? Thoughts?
Great job. We appreciate everything that our staff does. Good job.
Let's take a picture.
Appreciate you putting your life on the lines in multiple aspects for the city.
I'm not so sure if you had an opportunity to see the video. And you're right, Chief, one of the challenges was we didn't see behind the badge who was in fact involved. It's great to see that, but let me just make one point. There was some heroism there. There was an incredible effort. I can't help but think at the moment, all that training you've been working on, all the things you've learned to do and do well, went into action. I don't know who would run to a fire like that, okay, without the instinct of the training kicking in, and obviously the worth of a life. And you know, we can reward you all day long, but I can't help but think the people who were impacted the most are probably, thank heaven, okay, you were there to make a difference. Well done. Well done. Okay. Matt, item number 2, resolution 1935, renewing the contract with Waste Management.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, we recommend that we table this item. We are still in negotiations with this contract, just working out some of the minor details of it.
Okay. It's recommended that we table. Council, do I have a motion then to table resolution 1935?
I have a question about that. Have we went out and researched other providers other than Waste Management?
Yes, to kind of give you a background of what's going on is our contracts come and due June 30th of this next year. And so we had a committee with the city. We had utility clerks, we had the financial staff, we had the legal staff, we had Public Works, and we reached out to other organizations and talked to them about the services. One of the big hiccups that we were encountering is that our provider owns the cans. We like our current contract as well. That was another thing that we really wanted to keep. We pay per can and not for the tonnage of the cans, and so there's a lot of variability, and that's kind of why we were looking at going with Waste Management.
I don't have a problem with them. I just want to make sure that we're
Yes,
keeping them
we
honest.
did our due diligence, yes.
Thank you.
Good question. Any questions, comments?
No.
Okay, council, do I have a motion then to table resolution 1935?
I'll make that motion that we table resolution 1935, renewing the contract with Waste Management.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you. We'll take that topic up, Matt, when you're ready to present it back to the council for consideration and approval. Okay, we're going to jump past ordinance 1919. That'll be an issue that could take place after we have a RDA board discussion. But with that then, we do have a presentation. And Mandy, are you sharing that thought with us? Perfect, thank you.
just go ahead. Yeah. So we have a PowerPoint to go along with it so we can show you the pictures of the program that I'm speaking about, but I'll just go ahead without the pictures and we can send them to you later.
Okay.
All right, Mayor, Council, it's great to be with you this evening. I have the pleasure, along with our Records Department Manager, Jordan Schmidt, to present with you the Roy City Police Department My Impact Program. The Chief approached Jordan and I about creating a nonprofit organization for our department to be a part of. Jordan and I came up with the My Impact Program. The My Impact Program was established on July 9th of 2019. The main idea and focus of the My Impact Program are to help officers with PTSD and allow them to give back to our community in cases where they may be involved in life-changing calls or just wanting to make a difference in our community. The Roy City My Impact Program intends to foster a stronger bond between Roy City Police Department employees and citizens by encouraging employee participation in community outreach programs and sponsored community events. Oftentimes, employees do not get a chance to interact with citizens outside the roles that we play while working for the city and don't feel as if we have a positive impact on our relationship with Roy City citizens. It is our hope that with the program, we can facilitate opportunities for employees and citizens to come together to create a better community to live, work, and play in, and to support our employees as they make an impact within the community. Roy City Police My Impact Program receives its funding from the following. Our officers may grow beards year-round for a donation of $20 per month, $10 per pay period deducted from their payroll check. Personal nonprofit donations from employees and community members, and all monies collected as part of the fundraiser will be used as determined by the staff of the My Impact Fund. Since July 9th, 2019, we have been able to help numerous community members. For example, in July, the My Impact Program, with the help of Captain Hammond, was able to collect over $300 in donations for a family who recently lost their husband and father to suicide due to PTSD. Jordan, our records manager, was able to get Minky Couture to donate 3 blankets to the wife, daughter, and sons who were left behind to pick up the pieces. The My Impact Program took the donations received and put together a gift basket for the family to enjoy a night out. It was indeed an honor to be a part of this outreach, and I can tell you that we made a difference. The family couldn't thank the Roy City Police Department enough for their efforts. Sergeant Gwen came to the My Impact Program in August and wanted to create a breast cancer awareness police badge for October. The idea behind creating this badge was so that our officers could show their support to a great cause we're all very well aware of and donate the funds raised to purchase these badges to our local organization. We were able to raise $1,038.82 and donated all of the proceeds to Deborah Lynn's Mastectomy of Ogden. Debbie Carter is a breast cancer survivor and donates a lot of time and money to the community members struggling with the diagnosis of breast cancer. She supplies them with all sorts of needs, from care packages in the hospital, implants, reconstructive surgery. After the donation was made, Debbie was kind enough to let us know that in October, the My Impact Program the funds donated helped 5 ladies in October, and Jordan and I just received a letter last week that we were able to help 8 families with that money in November. The My Impact Program has been able to do a lot in the 5 short months that we have been up and running, from helping a local Boy Scout from helping a local boy who left the Boys and Girls Club, went missing, from our own scary situation that happened here in our department. Recently, the My Impact Program has also had the opportunity to team up with a local Boy Scout working on an Eagle Scout project. He was able to donate 15 Thanksgiving meals to the My Impact Program. We reached out to the Roy City Human Resource, Utilities, DV Advocate, Courts, Police Department, and local schools to help 15 families out in our community struggling to provide Thanksgiving for their family. The program has already done more for our department and the community than we can ever have imagined it would. The support from the department, along with the community working together, we have been able to create a stronger relationship by working together and helping our officers. Thank you for your time and for supporting the Roy City My Impact Program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
That was about it up. Cool. Yay. That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, comments, council?
No, I think that is a great effort, and I'm glad that you guys took the initiative, Chief, to be able to create something for your department that will help all of the officers involved and everybody in your department. Is this something that could be expanded? I mean, it is a great effort that you guys are raising money within the police department to be able to help throughout your own police officers, but also throughout the community. I mean, it's something that, yeah, we could expand on if we wanted to as a city organization without all of the departments.
I think something that's really neat about this is the employees doing it
It
because
is.
they care. This isn't the city forcing it on anybody.
Agreed.
This is the city employees doing it because they care about the citizens as well.
The only thing is maybe you just guys started a ball rolling. We'll have to see.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it would be lovely if we all could participate.
Yeah.
Chief, comment?
I just wanted to say that, you know, I came up with kind of a harebrained idea and presented it to these two. I went on vacation and came back a week later and they had a 503C up running. It was already, you know, they had legal paperwork going. The unusual thing is nobody's getting any money from it. They made sure that every single dime goes to the community. We've had one citizen who donated $2,500 to the program, 2 months ago. And the officers, as you see, as much as I don't like the idea of beers, if I can get them to donate every month, it's a great ongoing funding for this. And I just want to thank Jordan and Mandy and the other record crew. We can have, stand up, Harry. And Harley, stand up, Harley.
Carly.
It's our civilian employees in the police department who are running this and helping, we help them.
Chief, I recommend that if you're a chief or at that level, that you have to pay for a mustache as well.
I pay, I don't grow a beard, but I pay.
Pay for part of the hair,
That's
huh?
right. I pay every payday as well.
So since you did have community citizens make a donation to this, so then we are accepting donations right into the program to be able to help. So I feel like this is something that maybe needs to be listed in our newsletter, that citizens could donate to the Roy City, Police Department Impact Program to be able to help our police officers with programs plus other efforts throughout the community. And maybe list some of the accomplishments. I mean, it's great. I mean, you've already, so many Thanksgiving dinners just went out, and who knows what you're going to be able to do for this Christmas time.
That's wonderful. Great comments. Any other comments? Appreciate
Well
the work.
done. Yeah, thank you.
Service has a tendency to be broader, obviously, than just responding to a 911 call. This is pretty revolutionary. This is far beyond, I think, the call of duty, in my opinion. So I think you can make an incredible difference with this. And I think your comment, which struck me the most, was the comment that simply says that sometimes police officers show up in a uniform on a call. You're talking about a program that fundamentally, puts the human part to this, that connection with people. That doesn't always have to be a 911 call, and that's incredible. It makes all the difference in the world. So well done.
Thank you. I think it's great. I mean, I want to round of applause.
I think it's important for our group to recognize that when our police are out in the community, they are recognized as positive people. We don't have a fear factor of our police. There's very much an ongoing relationship with our community and our police officers. So I think that's an important factor as to why this works so well.
Yeah, excellent comment. Thank you. Great presentation. Okay, we now have an opportunity to go into public comment. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience that would like to step up and make a comment on anything. All we ask would be is please step up to the mic and just give us your name and address. Okay, anybody have anything they'd like to share with us tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and jump right into the city manager's report. Matt?
Yeah, I have a couple of things to report. This last weekend was very, very busy for our Public Works Department. They were out on call to 14 different main breaks with the water. Very timely for them, worked a lot of hours, so big thanks to them. Our apologies for having to cut off the water, but when Mother Nature does it, we really have no control over it, but great work with them. I want to also report Mandy Warren just presented, and Armando Perez is going to be back in DC and they are going to be doing a presentation on drug addiction recovery. Some members of Congress will be there, White House representatives, and police departments from all around the country. So great work to them to be able to have that honor. Wanted to remind you all, December 11th at 1:30 p.m. we will, or 1:30 in the afternoon, we'll be help serving the seniors next door again. We had the opportunity to do that the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, so on December 11th we can do that as well. We also started sending out today via Facebook the annual Christmas light decoration contest, and so we asked nominations be done by December 13th, and then we'll email that out to council to go out and do the vote. So 3 lucky people will win that award. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Council, any comments? Anything you want to share with us? Let me just make one comment if I can. 2020 will be the U.S. Census time. Sometime in April, there will be obviously government employees, people hired that will be canvassing the entire city, as well as the county, as well as the state, I guess as well as the country, in preparation to start taking census counts. I cannot tell you how important that is to Roy City and any municipality and county. Federal funds are tied to that. Lots of different things the state uses is tied to that census count. And so we'll be putting some effort in terms of getting awareness of this effort, what's going to take place out, and encourage everybody if they will, please participate in this U.S. Census that's going to take place in April of next year. It will start in April, will run for a few weeks as they go through that process. Very, very important. We'll provide a lot of information out in our magazine to explain what this is all about and how important it is to Roy citizens. So with that, anything else before we go into recess? Okay, council. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have a motion then to go into recess to pick up a work session. We have 4 topics we need to talk about. These are topics that are brought up or tabled in previous meetings that we need to go through. So if you would, do I have a motion then to go out of city council into a recess for city council and go into work session?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Let's just take a second, get ready for a discussion on the work session.
Mayor, if I might add, it looks like on the agenda, we have that in the Roy City basement conference room. We could make that, is it our intent that it be here? So let's just have a motion that we hold it here.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
probably an
somebody can
excellent
just check
point.
and see if anybody has shown up down
Yeah,
there.
and then do you got somebody that can just run real quick and make sure we don't have anybody downstairs?
Even though the public isn't normally supposed to participate in those meetings, just in
Yeah, that's
case
a good
somebody's
point.
down there.
Could we have a motion then to modify that recess and indicate we're going to hold that work session here in the council chambers and not downstairs?
So moved.
Well, you're good at that. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
You say it so
Aye.
eloquently, I shouldn't have to repeat it. Aye.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, so we're going to have the actual work session right here. So let me just talk over the topics that will be discussed tonight. And council, the purpose of this obviously is to work a couple of things that the city council tabled from previous and wanted to have a work session to discuss it. 2 of these there's a couple other ones that are here that we need to address as well. So let me introduce the topics. We're going to talk about noise ordinance. We're going to talk about the outside storage of recreational vehicles. That's one that went through the planning commission and they made some recommendations. And the fencing setback ordinance changes, and then a proposed change to the code on solicitation. So those will be the topics.
Do you want to excuse the high school students?
Say it one more time.
Do you want to excuse the high school
Sure.
students?
They want
Sure, I've already signed their papers.
Okay.
It's up to you if you want to stay.
Unless there's others.
Yeah, if you have, if any of you students need some time for the city council, let us go ahead and take care of that before we jump into this work session, or you're welcome to stay. We'll leave it to your discretion.
I think I signed most of them. I might have missed one.
Mike went around and did that.
Totally.
thanks for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we got the students. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the noise ordinance. Let me just, if we can, if you've read the point paper that was posted, it just indicates a couple of things, but let me simplify it a little bit. One of the requirements in terms of Title IV indicates that if in fact you have a noise generating unit, there's some limits in terms of how much noise you're allowed within different districts within the city and at different times. Now, obviously, what's really important in this particular ordinance is a comment that says the boundaries between zones. It says, at boundaries between zones, there shall be a buffer zone of 50 feet and higher, okay? At the particular level of the adjacent zone shall be applicable. And so what they're really saying then is that we should have as a minimum 50 feet barrier between the noise generating unit and the property line. That helps us to dissipate any of that noise that may be too loud that is being experienced. Now, if you read in there, also Title 10 talks about screening, it talks about noise impact. But what's interesting in the Title 10, which deals with the land use component of this, the reality of this, council, is that it doesn't give specific numbers, unlike Title 4. Now, when the site plan for the assisted living facility was put together, it showed a auxiliary power generator unit 9 feet from the property line. It was just missed. It's 50 feet away from the assisted living, but it's 9 feet from the property line. And the power generator does create noise when it's operating. Luckily, it's not all the time.
Is it higher than the 55 decibel?
Yes. To be very specific, and I took this up to the GenRad emergency generator specifications, at 23 feet, it's going to reach a decibel rate of 64. And that's basic if it's a 7 kW unit, and 150 kW unit is going to reach about 66 decibels. So those are all higher than the allowable requirements according to our ordinance, Title IV.
What if it's screened and you have soundproofing in the screening?
That's correct, and that's what the city, excuse me, not the city, but the city brought it to their attention, and the assisted living did do. They put a screening unit around it, okay? But the challenge would be is that we think it got it down to the noise level, but the challenge would be is within 9 feet and not 50 feet according to the Title IV zone,
Mayor.
buffer zone. That's the issue.
With all due respect, let me weigh in on a legal opinion on that, okay? Title IV only deals with noise ordinance. It's not a zoning ordinance.
Right.
And I prepared something today, got a little bit of help from Steve, and if I could pass this out, I think it might make it clear to everyone. And I'll just pass these down. But I thought we might need a diagram that I think would help make it more clear to all of you. Can you hear me okay? But Title IV doesn't say anything about a 50-foot setback. Again, that's a zoning issue. Title IV, it's a noise ordinance, and it just establishes a noise buffer zone between commercial zones and residential zones. And it sets a 50-foot buffer zone. So what I did is if you take a look at this, you've got a commercial zone here, you've got your borderline, and you have your residential zone. Then it says you have to have a 50-foot, so you can see the 50 there, a 50-foot buffer zone. So in this buffer zone, in that area, you can have the higher decibel level. The higher decibel level happens to be the commercial decibel level. So that higher level can be within this 50-foot buffer zone.
So it's not stating that the generator has to be 50
No,
feet.
it doesn't.
It's stating that the noise level,
Yeah, so I don't know what that noise level is in that buffer zone because we have things around it. And it if somebody was to measure the decibel level now that we've surrounded it, if it's higher than the noise level, then that'd be a noise ordinance violation that we would deal with. But from a zoning aspect, no, this only deals with noise, and it doesn't say 50 foot, it says a 50-foot buffer zone when you're dealing with a borderline between residential and commercial. So I hope that clarifies it, but that's why I put that together, just so you could see how that would work.
Okay, and really, I think, and I appreciate that, because that does help us to define that. I guess maybe the question we need to ask is that, should the Title 10, which deals with land use issues, primarily where the Planning Commission works, should there be some reference, okay, in the Title 10 that draws back onto this noise ordinance in Title 4?
And I don't think so. I think we already mentioned in there that it should be, we don't really have specific distances or anything. I think we are covered, and I don't think we need to make reference to this at all.
Okay. I will just indicate to you is the resident who lives next to that has complained formally to the city. It says that when they turn that generator on, it creates so much noise in their home that they can't, they have trouble sleeping at night.
Okay, and so if they've made that complaint, then we need to have somebody check that out, see what that decibel level is. And from the ordinance, you measure that decibel level at the borderline.
Correct.
So we could see what that decibel level is, and if it's inconsistent, then they've got to make some adjustments to make that work.
Then the solution then, how would you approach this now? Just reach out to the residents and indicate to them that the
Well,
city will
if
take
they
a
have made a
measure?
complaint, then we should have somebody look into that complaint.
Okay,
That would have to be done when the machine is operating.
operating.
Yes, yes.
So they would have to let us know at a time that it's,
And really, the generator that we're talking about comes on periodically just to get the fluids going, and it's on a timer, and it usually comes
So-
on at night, so it's really, we would have to have,
we could have a consistent time that we could measure
yeah,
that.
we would have to know
decibel.
what time we go out there,
Okay,
because it's only like weekly or bi-weekly or something, and then if the power goes off, so.
right. So with that, I think what we're hearing then, council, would be is that maybe obviously we're making no decisions here, this is just a discussion.
Right.
But we could recommend to the city to go ahead, based on the complaint, and take that measurement.
Yeah, and we don't even need that record. If somebody's made that complaint, it's something that
Okay.
we can check out.
And Matt-
There is a process for getting exemptions on noise ordinance issues too, but we would just have to look in that. Let's just check out and see
Okay.
if we have a decibel level violation.
Yeah, and hopefully the screening device they put around the generator, we felt would probably fix this. The residents indicated they didn't. I'm not sure. I guess we just need to prove it. So
Yeah.
maybe, council, if you're okay, let's go ahead and have the city just have someone do a measurement of that, have them operate it, just to test it. Let's see if we have a problem that's violating of our Title IV.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay?
that works.
That's great. Okay, good discussion. The next one deals with outside storage of vehicles. The City Planning Commission basically proposed to the City Council some recommended changes. It was recommended that we basically table it during that meeting. You've got what those recommendations are. There was good dialogue at the time and why it was tabled, but here's the question for the City Council to consider. That would be is that we've got a recommendation from the Planning Commission. Either accept the Planning Commission's recommendations, change them, or don't do anything. Leave it as is. And that's really where we are on this one. So since it was tabled, this is not a decision point, but rather to give the city some directions. Are there any changes or anything you'd like to do with the Planning Commission's recommendations?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can I read something from a constituent prior to, is it open to read this?
This is a discussion, so you
Okay.
can offer any ideas.
I received this from a constituent. It says, "Hi, I realize that citizens typically don't provide input to work sessions. However, hopefully that the admin who receives this message will forward it to the council. There was a miscommunication on there, that's why I'm reading it. Storage of recreational vehicles. Storage and parking of recreational vehicles, including motorhomes, boats, caravans, trailers, or similar, must be parked on approved surfaces, asphalt, concrete, weed-free gravel. Cannot be parked more than 5 feet from the sidewalk." That's what it's stating in the proposed from the Planning Commission.
In part.
So the comment here is, I think of no logical reason why a recreational vehicle needs to specifically be 5 feet from the sidewalk. No person is so wide that they are going to be in a danger of hitting the back end of an RV while walking down the sidewalk, nor are they going to be wheeling something down the sidewalk that will hang over the edge of the sidewalk that far. In addition, I don't think there's a specific statement for cars or trucks. There's already a statement somehow in the list of ordinances that vehicles cannot park or hang over the sidewalk. I believe, if so, then I don't feel it's necessary. I actually agree with that 100%. As long as it's off the sidewalk, I don't have a problem with it.
I agree.
Secondly,
Can you see around it if you're backing a car out so that supposing a child were walking down the sidewalk? That would be my concern,
If,
you know, if there is no.
If you're close, if you're parked close to
If
the
you're parked very
sidewalk.
close to the sidewalk, a child is riding a bike, you can't see around that you're backing a car.
my thing is that there's no delineation between parking a truck there or parking an RV there. What's the difference?
I agree.
You're blocking the site one way or another. I think you ought to be consistent in usage. Secondly, cannot be parked in or block access to the required parking area. In the October 8th planning meeting, someone talked about why the city was concerned about blocking their own garages with recreational vehicles. It was stated the current ordinance requires each residential home to have side-by-side parking spaces inside or outside of the garage. The driveway can be parked on as long as has 2 spots wide. So if you have a single-car garage, I can't park anything in the driveway going into the garage because there aren't 2 spaces. That makes no sense. The individual went on to say the issue in this case was if the recreational vehicle was continuously parked in front of the garage, the owner couldn't utilize that spot for a car. I take issue with that. You open my garage or you open half the garages in town, they can't get a car in it anyway because it's so full of stuff. So who cares if they park an RV in front of it? I mean, that's just, what they do with their garage to me is their own thing because
Driveway.
I drive down my road every day and half the garages that are open, they couldn't park a car in there if they wanted to. So, and I'm not saying that's bad because half the time I'm that way as well. If you're enacting this rule to prevent vehicles from being parked continuously on the street, put a bullet item in the ordinance that points to existing rule about abandoned vehicles parked for 48 hours on the street. Don't try to back in it by regulating it from the opposite direction. If a person has 2 spaces in their garage and/or spaces in front of their garage on their driveway, why does the city feel the need to regulate what kind of vehicle gets parked in front of those required spaces? I agree with that. The law doesn't say the required parking area has to be solely for a parked truck or car, does it? I should be able to park 4 vehicles in those 4 spaces on my property in whichever order I want to, even if it means I have to shuffle them every time I want to go somewhere. Ditto, if I have a carport and driveway, a carport or a double driveway. All RVs parked, this is the next section, all RVs parked on property must be owned by the property owner or current leaseholder. If I want to let my neighbor park their Jeep in my double driveway so they don't have to shuffle their vehicles in a snowstorm, if my sister wants to park her truck in my house for a month, that should be all right. If I have the availability of approved surface, I get that we don't want somebody creating a business by converting their backyard into a parking lot for recreational vehicles. But address this issue, not the opposite. Word the bullet to say a citizen cannot lease or rent parking spaces at their place for recreational vehicles. I agree with that. Like I stated in the last council meeting, my father-in-law comes up and spends a month with me and brings his RV with him. He parks it at my house. This would say that he can't legally do that. So I take issue. I agree 100% that we shouldn't be subleasing our property for RV parking, but as long as I'm not doing it out of a business and I'm not charging somebody, if I want to let a friend, relative park, I don't see a problem with it.
Steve has,
Other comments?
Steve has a question.
Just to let you know, in the red section of the ordinance that's being crossed out, it currently says owned by property owner. So the RV must be owned by the property owner in current ordinance, so just, it's not that the planning commission made something else up, they just,
No, and that's what this discussion is about, not only the recommendation, but does it need to be changed in general?
Yeah.
Which, in my opinion, it does, but I'm only one of...
Okay. Well, we're not going to make the decision, just make recommendations, but any other comments, anything else you see in terms of the Planning Commission's recommendations you'd like to tweak, or you feel comfortable with, or?
Can I just ask, how do we regulate whether it is a for-profit parking? How would we go about regulating that? Because that has been a concern of,
Yeah, I mean, if they apply for a business license, but typically they wouldn't, and so it becomes very difficult, because they could just say, I'm not getting paid for it, it's not a business, and there's really, we would have to prove otherwise.
That's correct.
And so we have had problems in the city, like you said, that we've had a lot of complaints that somebody's having 7, 8 fifth wheels in their backyard, and logically, it's probably a business, but we can't prove that. So it becomes a little difficult to enforce.
Okay, and then how else are we going to regulate with what we've got stated in red, that it's owned by the property owner? Because just like Joe was stating, his father-in-law comes up and he stays a month with him and his RVs in his driveway. So technically that's not owned by the property owner, but how is that going to be regulated?
Yeah, that would be
Because,
very
again,
difficult as well.
I don't know how, so I don't know if we can tweak that, because I think under the rights of the property owner, do you see what I'm saying? The rights of the property owner has that ability to decide.
but what
But
I'm hearing
not
Steve
for
say is we are
not-for-profit.
currently in violation of that. Is that what I'm hearing you
Yeah.
say,
Yes.
Steve?
Tonight, if you guys, direct and guide, we can kind of make, if everybody agrees with Councilmember Paul, we can remove everything but the parked on the approved surface and leave in the crossed off, or leave out the crossed off, so it really is just, you can have recreational vehicles, there's no limit as long as you parked on correct and appropriate
Surfaces.
surfaces. It won't matter where you park it or who owns it.
That's my recommendation.
It's
I
what
think you run the risk of having a business that has no business license if you do that.
I think there's a lot of things you run the risk of having a business go on that,
And again, if you guys all agree with, or Councilmember, I'm going to call her Commissioner Paul, but it's Councilmember Paul. If that's kind of what you want, then when we come back for another meeting to approve it, then we can have this modified to your desires. Again, this is just what the Planning Commission had, through their process, come up with.
I mean, I know people that are running businesses out of their home, working on vehicles, so they have 4 or 5 vehicles in their driveway, that they're making money doing it, but I know they don't have a business license. It's the same thing. I mean,
Well, that's what I think we're getting complaints on, and so how do we manage that, I guess is the question.
Well, doesn't it say more,
Not to say.
no more
it's
than
okay.
2?
Currently.
So,
Currently.
I take issue with that too, because there are times I have more than 2.
And hence why.
I think the mayor at times has more than 2.
And that's why.
Well, in my case, I put them in a back garage, and I leave them there so you can't see them. But this is outside storage by definition. So the real issue here becomes, it really comes down to simply, and I think what Steve's saying is that the Planning Commission decided and recommended that there be a change because of some ambiguity associated with the existing. They provided us then, as a city council, an option. If you believe that there's certain portions of what they provided could be struck, taken out, then we could collectively say, let's take number 2, 3, 4 out of that. You've got a copy of it sitting in front of you, and then they can take that back and bring it back to the city council for final review and approval, okay, with the modifications from this recommendation. We can't approve it tonight, but we can recommend some changes if you see something you do not like in the current recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Or do you leave it to deal with the complaint, that if somebody complains that my neighbor's got 5 RVs, then we send somebody down to investigate it? Why do you have 5 RVs?
And that-
Are you running a business?
Someone building or fixing cars in the driveway, if a neighbor calls and complains that guys has, 20 cars in his lot, Mike would go down there and investigate. Do you have a
I
business?
think
And if
that's
you found out had a business, then we'd go through the proper. and
so
we can do that here, too.
leave the no more than 2, leave that still in there? No, take that out. So it's up to the property owner, the rights of the property owner to decide.
Well, in your packet, here's what was proposed by the Planning
I
Commission.
think Andy's got something to say.
Oh, I just want a little clarification. It sounds like we're saying we're going to let any vehicles, and it doesn't matter who they belong to or what, so long as they're on a legally parking space. Is that right?
That's my recommendation.
Okay, I just
Other
wanted,
thoughts on that? Because here's what the Plan Commission said in their proposal. They said, under the use, storage of recreational vehicles, storage and parking of recreational vehicles to include motorhomes, boats, caravans, trailers, or similar, must be, 1, park on an improved surface, asphalt, concrete, or weed-free gravel. 2, cannot be parked closer than 5 feet from the sidewalk. 3, cannot be parked in or block access to a required parking area. And 4, all RVs parked on the property must be owned by the property owner or current leaseholder. If you believe any one of those 4 options maybe should be stricken, then we can make a recommendation as a council to strike those, and they can revise this particular recommendation back to the council for approval.
I'd strike all but number 1. That's my vote. I know it's not a vote right now, but that's my recommendation.
Comments? That's a recommendation for consideration. Jan, how do you feel about that?
I'm looking.
Okay. Carlene, what's your thoughts on that?
I don't want, okay, parked on that one I want. Cannot be parked closer than 5 feet. That one, strike. Cannot be parked in or block access of a required parking area. Well, that one,
So you can't park in front of your garage.
That's right.
okay, that one, strike. And then all RVs parked on the property must be owned, strike that one too, so.
So probably just
Yeah,
number 1 would
yeah.
be, but I would recommend that we be able to investigate. whether-
Yes, I agree with that.
So
And-
if there could be some wording, if it appears that is being operated by a business.
Already kind of have that elsewhere.
Well,
Okay.
Okay.
All right, there, Steve, thank you.
one comment I wanted, that I think we need to follow up, and you mentioned the 5-foot requirement. Steve, do you have anything on, is there, we want to make sure we're not having some problem with any kind of safety issues, so.
The planning commission's concern was just as you're backing out of your driveway, you can see the
Can't
kid
see.
coming down.
That is a big concern.
But Councilmember Paul mentioned, well, if I can park my truck there or my Suburban or Escalade.
I've seen
is there
people
really-
park school buses and they
Yeah, so
come
there'd be a
right to
difference.
the sidewalk and we do not do anything about that.
So I understand what Councilmember Paul's thought is if we can't regulate Escalades from being parked right at sidewalk, what the difference would be a trailer.
That's remind him
I
that
was
you ought
gonna
to do everything you
say,
can
can
for
we-
safety. I
can we-
mean, whether it's
Height?
equitable or not.
If you're gonna go that way,
Vehicle and
you've
then
almost gotta
somebody
say
behind.
everything, because I can name in my neighborhood, there's 2 school buses that are parked on property that come right to the sidewalk.
It's gonna be fine until a kid gets hit.
I know.
And then, really, I don't want that on me. I would prefer to err on the side of conservative on that.
I agree, but it's also the responsibility of the operator to operate the vehicle safely. I mean, I don't think you can regulate everything to the point where.
What if we cut it down
You take
in
human
half and only go
interference out
3
of it.
feet from the sidewalk?
If you can't see, you can't see. Whether you're operating it safely or not, if you can't see,
It's
you
hard.
can't see.
Well, then, based on this, then, maybe the action would be is strike, if I understand, strike number 2, number 3, and number 4, but basically modify number 2 to be much more of a safety issue and frame up some wording that talks to the safety of this. Is that a better way of putting it?
I'm gonna say if you're gonna go that far, that all trees, everything that blocks view needs to be within 5 feet of the sidewalk. Now you're opening
I
up
don't
a
think you have to
can.
go within 5 feet, but you have to say there is prudence in how you park, I don't know how you would word that, but that you are.
I mean, there's people that's got fences right up
Walking
to,
on the sidewalk.
there's people that's got fences right up to the sidewalk that would prevent you from seeing backing out of your drive. I'm just saying, if you're gonna regulate it for RVs, you better open it up to anything that blocks the view. I agree with the safety part, but I think you have to open it up to anything that blocks the view then.
Okay, the
Well,
unfortunate thing
maybe-
is
somebody
we're
might-
not addressing beyond just the RVs. That's the only sections on the conversation today.
Can we list it as such,
Well,
that anything that blocks the view? I mean,
yeah, but how do you
because,
regulate that?
because you're gonna have different sized
Maybe we could
vehicles,
Right now,
right?
the only thing in the ordinance that talks about safety is a fence. And if your driveway, current driveway, not if you've expanded into an RV pad, if your current driveway is I'll just throw out 10, I think it's 10 feet. If it's closer than 10 feet, then you've got, your fence has to have some sort of sight triangle. It doesn't define how big that is. You have to take into account how fast is the road, is there a bend or is it straight? But if you're 10 feet or more, that fence can be square. So already the fence is kind of precluding some of the concern you've got. Again, unless we take it beyond just trailers and make it vehicles, period, I don't know how you could regulate this beyond.
And then Mayor, I think you were making the point that we're not dealing with all vehicles, we're just
No,
dealing
that's
with
what I was just-
recreational vehicles, so that's
Recreational.
boats
Yep,
and
that
things
just
that are.
kind of, yeah.
So if we basically look at it then as saying that we want to look at vehicles, then maybe there's another portion of some of the ordinances more
Ordinance, I agree.
appropriate to deal with vehicle safety issues as
And
parked on
keep
that, than would be the RV. You could strike all three then, but the condition would be is to ask the city to then look at another ordinance where we can basically look at safety in terms of parking
Any
vehicles or anything.
vehicle.
So let me throw another thing at it. My trailer's 30 feet long, but I also have a 4-foot tongue on it. My tongue comes right to the curb. I've got 4 feet that you can see over because it's just tongue.
But
So-
I think your point was, and the whole conversation on the safety is, can the operator see?
If they can see, the tongue wouldn't bother me at all. I just want to be able to
So
see a child.
how do you write that in there? No, and I agree, how do you write that in there?
Well, that's
Lots
the
of sight.
city's
Because if you're gonna say
responsibility.
5 feet, you talking the whole thing or open sight 5 feet?
They'll have to
Or
draft
open
something
site
for the
5
council
feet.
to consider.
I'll have
That's
to
not-
research and see if there's something written like that. I mean,
It's
it
not a
could
bad idea.
be
I'd appreciate
nothing,
it.
We might be able to create
Yeah.
a.
nothing over 2.5 feet, and just.
Tall,
pick a
yeah,
number.
height-wise.
So
No,
your tongue,
height-wise.
if it's 2 feet tall,
Or another trailer, I mean, if they've got a flat deck trailer,
yeah.
Yeah.
that's easily
I
seeable.
could definitely research and see if there's other cities,
I just want to be able
Go
to
height.
see a kid coming down the sidewalk.
like the mayor said, you know, tonight's just RVs. We could
Right.
come back with another one that addresses everything and not worry about this one at this time.
In a different area within the ordinance.
I think that would be great.
Okay, so let's take that as an action then. We'll
So we can
strike
strike all
2,
three of
3, 4
Yeah.
off this list, and then what we'll do is we'll ask the city then to frame this particular ordinance back to the council, and then come up with another appropriate place within the existing ordinances that can deal with parking
Near a
on
sidewalk.
public, for public safety. We okay with that?
Because isn't a sight triangle also height too? So if you're in the sight triangle, as long as you're under a certain height, because I know campaign signs fit that. If you're under a certain height in the triangle, so determine what the sight triangle is and.
Use that? Great. Are you okay with that, council?
So even though we're striking number 2, but we're going to reword it.
We're going to reword it
Okay,
into the
perfect,
ordinance.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. The next one on our list is, we're going to look at fencing. Let's take a look at the solicitation one. You should have basically received, a resident approached the city council and asked us to take a look at the solicitation. What his point was is that we have lots of residents, for the most part, that have no solicitation signs in their front yard, but the ordinances don't support any issue associated with having a non-solicitation sign. He offered 2 areas, both Syracuse and Layton, on their recommendations, and asked that the city consider them making some adjustments to our current ordinance to look at maybe offering some type of language in there that deals with unwanted solicitations on private property.
So my question is on that, if we're trying, or if the intent's to change it, are we saying if you have a no solicitation sign, they can't even enter your property? If that's the case, it better be posted on the property line, because I can't see what's on their door until I get up there.
No, I can tell you how that kind of works. If you want to post that on your property line, yeah, that would be correct. But typically, most ordinances deal with that being at your door, okay, your primary door, where it says no solicitation. At that point, they aren't supposed to knock, they aren't supposed to ring your doorbell or anything.
Can they leave a flyer on your door?
I don't know. We could put that in the ordinance.
And where do campaigns fall into that? Because
Yeah.
I've been under
Yeah,
the,
what you've got, things are somewhat treated differently in what I've seen. You've got nonprofits, political organizations, religious organizations. they all usually aren't required to pay a registration fee, but the individual property owner has this property right, and that person can say, I don't want to be bothered regardless of what. So quite often you'll see the nonprofits and that. The commercial industry, commercial businesses are going to have to pay a fee to get their license and so on. So it's unique, and I'll tell you, I brought this file here that I've got because I've been working on a project where I'm trying to go through all of our business licensing, and this would be part of that. I could come up with something right now and piecemeal it, but I'm trying to do it all into one thing. And it's somewhat complicated because you've got the Charitable Solicitations Act, you've got the Utah Administrative Code.
There'll be a test on those.
So, so you're trying, and there's constitutional issues, but what I've seen typically is that they set it up in the way that, okay, you really should check in, you don't have to pay the fee, but you should have something. So you get your business license if you're commercial, you can go out to different residents. You have certain requirements, though, for commercial licenses where it can be denied, and you have an appeal process there, too. So they can go, and as long as you don't have that do not disturb or, no solicitation, then they have to leave you alone and you can call. Now, typically as a resident, whenever your door gets knocked on, you should check because sometimes you have individuals out there who are masquerading as, hey, we're doing solicitation, they knock on your door, they ring your doorbell, you don't answer, they break into your house. So typically you should, before you even open the door, you should say, okay, who are you with? What do you have? Can you show me your identification? So they should have a registration card typically from the city that would say, and then they can choose whether you want to talk to them or not. If they don't, then you don't let them in and you call the police and let them know.
And is that on charitable organizations as well, or is that?
Yeah, so far in my research, it appears to be the same, okay?
For everything.
Yeah,
So
because if it's a religious or a political organization, if you don't want to be bothered.
Kid working with Girl Scouts.
Yeah, they couldn't, let's say the Girl Scouts come by and you don't want to let that in, you can't be forced to let somebody come into your house.
So you better
have to be registered, is what I'm asking.
So they should, and they really, for everybody's safety, should say, hey, I'm with the Girl Scouts, or if I'm soliciting from a political organization, I should have something, and you can ask.
So are you better off posting it on property line? If you're going to go that far, you might as well post a no trespassing sign.
Well, you could, but there are issues with that because typically we have driveways, we have sidewalks that everybody can walk up to, and unless you say, stay off my property,
which is the no trespassing.
It'd be kind of unique, but typically you can put in your ordinance, it should be posted on your front door.
That makes it pretty.
So,
Comment, Ryan?
but it's been done different ways, so it's something
No more campaigning for you. How many no solicitation places did you go to?
Well, but I think it's a broader conversation. The conversation is there are people who basically advocating a position. So it may very well be they have something they want to share by the Girl Scouts, as you're referring to. And then you have people selling. And I think most complaints right now are saying is, I don't want sellers coming on my property.
Right.
So no solicitation, meaning I don't want vendors, I don't want solicitors, I don't want those people coming. You can write the ordinance that simply says, if you are selling something and there is a no solicitation sign, you shall not enter. You shall not ring the doorbell, you should not make any contact at all.
And then if they came to get a business license, then they would know that in the ordinance, that if there's a no soliciting sign,
Exactly
they
right.
cannot ring the doorbell at all.
right.
If they come together.
If a neighbor
No.
has an interest and says, I want to talk to my neighbor, or let's assume like we've seen just recently, some of us were involved in walking around with the Air Force to bring notification of potential hazards. We were advocating a position.
Correct.
We weren't selling anything. We're simply, the Air Force was advocating a position. So maybe the answer to this conversation would be is, if you're going to structure a no solicitation policy, then let the no solicitation policy focus on the selling component, which most residents do not want to be bothered with, and still allow a neighbor or someone who's advocating a position, okay, to allow them to approach. The homeowner can still ask them to leave. And the ordinance can be very clear that if you ask to leave, you will leave, whether you're soliciting a sale or anything, you're still asked to leave.
Right.
But at least what it gives, at least all property owners, some leverage within the ordinance that simply says, I don't want to be annoyed if I don't want to be annoyed by people selling me stuff I don't want to be sold to.
Right.
So we can structure then maybe a ordinance along that line.
Right, and I'll look at that. I do think, though, that regardless whether it's commercial or political, I think if you don't want to be bothered in your home, you can say no solicitation. So,
Yes.
but what I want to do is look and see at how that's been struck. I have looked, because I know this is part of what I'm working on overall, and that's when I'm seeing a lot. Typically, it's just the fee part, and then if you want to put up a sign saying no solicitation, that means don't ring my doorbell, don't bother me, I don't care what you're here to
Not
present.
but that's not right, written in our ordinance, so that when they come to get a business license, they're not aware of that.
No, our ordinance,
So that's gotta be-
it's something that needs to be, we need to have a
Okay.
more detailed ordinance
Well, I
dealing
think
with
we
that.
need to put that in our magazine too, somewhere, that if there's a
Once we
sign
pass the ordinance.
For any
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
Right. But it's something, I think, in
Nonprofit,
looking at our business
for-profit.
licensing, that needs to be redone. There's two aspects of that, but I want to restructure it and bring it more up to date, and it's a project that I'm trying to get completed.
I would think even if it's, I would think even if it's not selling anything, if it says no solicitation, it's no solicitation.
Well, it can read that way.
Yeah.
And then there can be a penalty, as you read in the Layton and the Syracuse, there's a penalty if in fact you violate that. But the
Right.
key would be is that how far do you want it to take it? And if you want the no solicitation means no contact at all, then all we have to do, we can use literally the Syracuse or the Layton's template and simply write that as the ordinance, and it's pretty thorough. But here's what I think I understand, Council, what you're interested in. I think Andy has a pretty good idea what you're interested in. Let's see what Andy can go ahead and finish over the next few months, a solution, and then bring it back to council in terms of a change in ordinance. You okay with that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Brian, you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Then let's go ahead and do that. If you don't take that action, Andy, Matt? Okay, last but not least, we have the fencing and facility setbacks. The Planning Commission provided to the City Council a recommendation in terms of how to structure not only fencing options, but also setback options. In the point paper that you have, it kind of put all that in there, in large part because the proposal was going to clean up a lot of things in what they proposed. And there is what the Planning Commission recommended. You have a copy of that in your packet. It was tabled on in that city council meeting, open for a conversation in this meeting. Council, what's your thoughts in reference to what the Planning Commission has provided to the city council? What changes or what things you'd like to see to make improvements to this particular ordinance?
I can explain some of the history of it if you'd like, and how the Planning Commission came up with this.
Okay, go ahead, I think that would be, we do have some public here, so.
I know you're not going to read all 30 pages, but in between now and when you do make a vote.
Can I get the Reader's Digest version?
That is the Reader's Digest version.
How about the Clef Notes?
We posed the question to the Planning Commission July 23rd of this year, and it was more of, there's inconsistencies or ambiguityness in the ordinance about fencing requirements. And what those fencing requirements are, is it vinyl, or is it masonry, or what is it? So we had them look at all sections of the ordinance that talked about fencing or walls. And then how do we clean this up? In your packet you just got, there's a presentation that they were given of, again, a few cities around of how they've done their fencing ordinances. And granted, the spectrum is huge.
I want to make a clarification or point of order, whichever. The there's a difference between zone and use. Which do we go off of? Because I may be in a commercial zone, but I have a residential house there. What ordinance do I have to follow?
Again, it depends.
On?
Well, again, what are we talking about? On this aspect.
Okay, let's go to the point of order. It's the elephant in the room.
Okay.
The assisted living center on 5600 west of 3500 west.
Right.
Okay, it's zone community commercial, which has its screening requirements. But my understanding is it's an assisted living center there, and an assisted living center falls under residential use.
It depends
Which
on
it's
how-
not a hospital, they're there full-time, they're living there. I get it, there's the aspect of you have doctors and nurses and that, but it's a residential facility for people. And so that, I believe, is where I think one clarification needs to come from.
Right.
Are we going off of use, or are we going off of zoning?
And this is what this is trying to resolve. In your packet, 10-1031, it talked about transition between residential and non-residential districts. But even within that section, it talked about non-residential uses and residential uses. So not only you're looking at the district, but you're also looking at the use. So the planning commission tried to look at it and say, okay, regardless of if it's a residential or commercial, how do we fix this issue? Again, because 10-1031 was ambiguous in the nature, it talked about zone to zone, but also had within it use. It talked about use. So how do we clean that up? Again, when the planning commission looked at setbacks, right now it just says 20 feet for every 1 foot, height of the building. But the problem is it's to the wall that's next to where you're starting from. So if you have a 24-foot wall, you get a 24-foot setback, not the 50 feet because the building's 50 feet, 100 feet away. So this is saying, okay, developer, this is what you're going to do. You're going to pick from these 4 options of setbacks. And with those 4 options, you have, if you want to do a 15-foot setback, that's close. So the planning commission looked at it and said, okay, if you're going to do a close setback of 15 feet, you are going to have a 6-foot masonry wall. There's no doubt about it. There's no somewhere else in the section that says I could have vinyl. It's masonry. And with that, you're going to have 2.5 canopy trees, in this case 3 understory trees, and canopy is those 40-foot tall ones. An understory is more the 10, 15, 20-foot ones. You're going to have so many evergreen trees, so many shrubs.
So when you say adjacent to a residential zone, what's adjacent to a residential zone?
In the case in point, this would be the assisted living facility next to the residential.
Right.
It doesn't say use or zone, this just says your zone in this. Doesn't matter what your use is in that zone, this is what it is.
So depending on.
To me, that's 2 residents next to each other.
But
But
again,
they're
it's a
different
commercial
districts.
zone versus a residential zone.
They're different districts. And if you look at it, the interesting part of this conversation would be is, the developer could have basically put that in a residential. It didn't have to go commercial. And therefore, 10-1031 would not have been even a play because it talks about different districts. But that wasn't the choice. The choice was it went into commercial. And that created one other issue in this particular conversation. And let me just make it clear why this is so important. We have another option coming at us that's already been presented that suggests we got another assisted living being considered on the property on Midland and 3500. And that's butting up against, a residential.
But it's zoned residential right now,
No.
and they can, it's community commercial.
Community
You've got the
commercial.
same thing.
And they can put that assisted living in a community commercial zone. So we really need to fix this, council, to make this right, so the next one that comes, and is coming, is not going to basically have the same problems we have with the existing one we have on 3500 and 56.
Now, to go to your point, later on in the ordinance, it talks about taking some stuff out of 10-1031.
That's right.
It's not because we want to get rid of those problems. When you look at the landscape, the screening landscape, it says if you're non-residential use, here's one of those issues, located against a residential zone, we're going use and zone, you must have a 10-foot landscape strip. Well, okay, so even if it said non-residential zone adjacent to a residential zone, well, what's in our landscape ordinance that says what has to be in that? Nothing. It could be river rock, and that's all you put, and that's your landscaping. So what's the difference between river rock and a 10-foot concrete pad? Really nothing. So again, when the planning commission looked at it, it says
Rather
no.
have concrete because you're not going to have weeds coming through it.
Right. Well, the planning commission said, well, in this option, we are going to get landscaping. Not just landscaping, it's going to dictate number of trees, canopy and understory, number of evergreens, and the number of shrubs. So no more, I'm going to have river rock or a concrete pad. You have to have this many within every 100 feet. So in this case, if you just take the west side of the property, it was 200 and some odd feet, they would have to have 5 canopy trees, 8 understory, it would be landscaping there. Now, if you think about it from a developer standpoint, like most everybody, we want it as cheap as possible, right? How much is a masonry wall going to cost?
Right now, the proposed plan, and we got to talk that at the end of this, anywhere from $200,000 to $400,000.
Okay. Or I say, I'm going to have a 20-foot setback and it's vinyl. Also now I got a little wider setback. It's still going to have evergreen trees, shrubs, and everything else. I've just now gone wider. Me as a developer, I'm going to go for the cheaper option. I hate to say it that way.
Okay.
I'm going to go for a vinyl, a little bit farther setback. I'm still going to have the increase in canopy trees and stuff kind of adjust on things. That's why on the far right, you kind of have a picture of what it could look like every 100 feet. So the planning commission said, okay, this will guarantee not just a horizontal setback, but if they say I want a small setback of 15, we're going to have a vertical setback. So your building isn't necessarily in 5-10 years when the trees are big, going to be really obstructive. Again, the developer has the option of picking which one they want.
So they have to have a barrier, solid surface barrier, whether it's
What if it's a wood fence?
We didn't take into account wood, but you could always say vinyl can equal wood.
I mean,
But this is saying you have to have a fence and trees, regardless of how far.
All this does say that.
That.
Even at the 30 feet, it says you can have a 6-foot vinyl or a 6-foot chain link, and then the S in parentheses and PV and stuff like that talk about solid, partial view, and view. And those are defined a little bit later, I can show you, but you still have to have the number of trees and stuff. Now, if you had a 30-foot setback with, say, a chain link fence or a view vinyl, now I can see through, because before, if it's a 6-foot vinyl, 6-foot masonry, are shrubs really going to be what the resident sees? No, so in this case, there isn't as many shrubs with a solid side obstructing fence. But as soon as I get to those partial views or chain link, now the understory stuff becomes more. Down in the 30, shrubs is 1.25 of 15 per 100 feet. So you're getting 18, 19 shrubs per 100 feet. Where in the 15 foot, it's 7.5 shrubs per 100 feet. Because again, I get a masonry wall. The only people who are going to see it are on the commercial side. I still have to want something underground, on the ground, but not as many. I have more big trees and less shrubs, or the other one has got more shrubs. So the Planning Commission looked at, again, Clinton City, Ogden, and Layton. You don't want to know Ogden's. They are very liberal in their code. If you have a topography issue of any sort, you can have a 6-foot fence, and if the 6-foot fence really doesn't do anything, you don't have to have it. Again, they're more on a hill in some cases, but in this case, because you got one higher lower and I got a 6-foot fence at property line, did it really do much?
Did you by chance look at, like, even farther down, like Bountiful seems to be a city we compare to a lot as a sister city?
Some of the Bountiful issues, again, they're on a hill. That's why I looked at Clinton, because they're flat. But Ogden says, in this case with the assisted living facility being 4 feet higher than the residents, a 6-foot fence really doesn't do anything.
That's right.
They don't need a fence according to Ogden. Planning Commission looked and says, no, we don't want to go that route, let's don't do that. They kept in if it has a height difference and the fence is going to be on the highest point. But they felt by having this requirement of mandating or requiring, hate using mandate, makes it really, government's coming down on you. We can say there will be landscaping, where our current one says what is landscaping and doesn't define what landscaping is.
It really just takes everything out and just basically says, where do you want to put your building? And if you put your building farther this way from the fence or farther this way, it's up to the developer. This is what you're gonna decide, and then this is what you're gonna require
once
on
you
the
make it-
fencing and the landscape.
Yeah, once you make the distinction of what setback you want, then everything else is locked in what you have to do.
That's right.
Now again, the type of fence or, the view, partial view or the non-view, chain link, that was kind of not everybody loved that chain link part, but here's kind of the solid partial view and view. A 6-foot fence view is half solid, half not. Partial view is 4 feet solid, 2 feet not, and solid, of course, is solid. They didn't think anything taller than 6 feet was really warranted.
I agree.
The issue is they asked the building department, when and what time does it require a building permit? And the costs just escalate once you get to that point, because now you got to get it engineered. It's got to be, structurally sound for when the wind blows, where 6 feet doesn't require anything like that.
Yeah.
Again, if we allow an 8-foot fence and a residence wants to come, they have to incur the same costs of an engineer. So again, leaving it at 6 feet, yes, some people are 7 foot tall and going to be able to see over it, or I might be a little higher than you. That's why the vegetation helps again. They really put a lot of thought and effort into this to bring something that will be beneficial not just for the commercial side, but also protect the resident side.
I like that it's consistent.
And again,
Provide consistency.
they went through all the
Here it
ordinance and
is.
said, okay, take this out because this table's in place.
matter what zone
That will
you're
take
in.
away the wall requirements. We know exactly what they're going to have to do. The landscaping requirements, we already know what they'll have to do.
That's right.
So cleaning up a lot of that
I
ambiguousness
agree.
and putting it all in one small little table that, yes, does look daunting, but if you ever look at Clinton's, there's
Not really.
another 10 tables just like this, depending on what you are, they are, and you want. So,
I think in all fairness, council, this is really, it cleaned up a lot of the ambiguity that exists within the ordinance. I think the question we just need to ask ourselves would be is, do we want to take the recommendations of the planning commission as written? Do you want to make some minor tweaks to it? Or do you basically just want to leave it as is? And if I hear it says, hey, we're okay with it, I think the explanation is very clear, then my recommendation to you that would be is, let's have the city formally bring this back to the city council for final approval. We can tweak it if you have some second thoughts then, but then we can have an ordinance that's ready to go the next time we assemble a city council.
I say it looks good.
I
I
agree
do
with it.
too.
I agree
Okay.
with it also.
Sold.
One last piece, a little more controversial, but we think we've got to put it on the table. At this moment, the assisted living facility has gone through significant changes, if you have not been down there. A lot of the complaints that came from the residents have been resolved. There's been an issue about screening AC units, they're screened. 6-foot vinyl fence is up. They have moved the garbage container's been moved 20 feet, okay, to the east. All that is done. Everything has basically been done that we think could have been done, putting the city in an interesting position. I hope we don't see again, to be honest with you, because it really was not us. There are some ways that this could have been handled differently. But separated from that, The last piece of this conversation would be is this. Residents down there, some residents down there believe that the city should also replace the vinyl fence with a masonry fence. And when I made the comment that would cost the city anywhere from $200,000 to $400,000 to put 1,123 feet of masonry fence, and not just masonry fence, engineered masonry fence, because there's some interesting things. The council has to make a tough choice, and that choice is simple. Are we going to ask the city to basically change in a budget format to do that, or are we going to say the 6-foot vinyl fence, which is in compliance with the site plan, which calls out a 6-foot vinyl plan, is suffice, it meets the standard, it meets the requirement, this issue is closed. The city needs direction.
I've actually walked the property, and I feel that the 6-foot vinyl fence that's already in place is sufficient for what is currently there. I feel that it provides, I mean, there is some elevation difference, but I do feel that it still provides the privacy issue for the residents that are there, and so I feel that what's already in place needs to stay.
Okay.
I
Any
would
other
agree
comments?
with that. I can't in good conscience ask our citizens to pay that much money.
For one area,
Okay.
for 6 or 8 homes.
For probably 13
13
residents.
homes.
13 homes.
Okay, then I'm going to take it from this conversation is that the thing we have to do on the assisted living deals with the noise ordinance issue.
Agreed.
We'll have that metered, and once we find out whether or not that's going to be in violation of the ordinance, then the bottom line is that the assisted living is complete. We've done everything we can as a city to help bridge those issues. We've solved a lot of them for them. We think we've got a solution that's going to work, and we're in compliance with the policies. We okay with that?
Yeah, I think if they want to go any farther, they're going to have to take it up with the
Okay.
assisted living center in a legal manner.
Agreed. Okay, having said that then, anything else we want to talk about the work session before we move back into an RDA board meeting?
Make a motion, we go into an RDA board meeting.
Okay, I now have a motion to go into an RDA board meeting. I don't think I need a motion to get out of workshop, do I?
I make a motion to close the work session.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you. Now we're going to go into an RDA board meeting. Be with us, we have to walk this path, so let's just walk through this and get everybody ready. Okay, do I have a motion then to go into an RDA board meeting?
We don't need to, she's saying.
Don't need a motion? Okay, then we're going to open up the RDA board meeting. There is one topic that is in this particular meeting we need to walk through, so let's do that. I'm going to have a roll call and welcome now board members, Board members Burrell, Board members Yeoman, Board members Saxton, and Board members Paul. Okay, so we're ready to go ahead and do that, and welcome everybody to the RDA board meeting. Let's just go ahead and we'll kind of set the stage, and then I'll open for public comments. And then from the public comments, we'll welcome anybody who'd like to step up to the microphone and make comment on this. Randy, if you'd like to lead us in the conversation, let's go ahead.
Mr. Chair, members of the RDA board, tonight we're having a public hearing to consider whether or not a community reinvestment project area should be adopted for this area that we have outlined for you here on the map. I've also asked Steve to pass out maps to people in the audience, so those who may not know what we're talking about would have that map. Basically, this area is the front runner station for UTA. That's the major property owner within the project area. We have included some property on both sides. We also felt like in the creation of the project area, there might be some opportunity for property owners across the way from the tracks to the west to also maybe have some benefit from the creation of a project area. So what we've done is we have created this area as the area for consideration tonight in the public hearing. Couple of quick things I need to put on the public record. Again, the creation of redevelopment of community reinvestment areas is governed by the state statute. It's not a city ordinance. There's no city ordinances or anything like that that we have to follow. Basically what this is that what's making that? I think it's that. Oh, okay. I can sit down if that solves it. But so we're working through state statute, and the state statute gives us specific things that we are required to do. So for the record, we did send a notice to the property owners of record. The record that we look at, and we're required to under the law, is where the tax notices are sent. So that's the address where property notice were sent to. Those notices were sent to the property owners 30 days prior to this hearing. In addition to that, the law requires that we have to publish this notice of this meeting 14 days in advance, and that notice has to be published on the city's website and on the Utah Public website, which we have complied with. That was a 2-week notice. Morgan, as the city recorded, did you receive any return letters from this? No. So we did not receive any letters returned from any of the deliveries. Matt, we had some meetings with a couple of property owners, and you also, so maybe for the record, you can indicate who we met with.
Yeah, you and I met with Leon and Diane Wilson and Terry and Joanne Anderson.
Okay. So in the letter to the property owner, we indicate that if they'd like to have a meeting with us to discuss what we're doing, the plan or anything, they could do that. And we had those property owners reach out to us and have a conversation. So let me just quickly, why are we doing this? Well, because under that Utah statute that I talked about.
That's 30 years.
They're trying.
You're getting feedback or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't need the mic. I've got a big enough voice. I think I can. You can all hear me, right?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, good. You can all hear me, so I'll just make sure I talk loud. The project area is under the redevelopment law. When we create a particular area, then what happens within that area is that the property taxes that are currently being paid from all property owners are kind of frozen for the purpose of distribution. So that money continues to flow to the taxing entities. So the school district gets its dollars, the county gets its dollars, the city gets its dollars, the water gets their dollars, the sewer gets their dollars. Whoever levies a tax within that continues to receive those dollars. However, if development was to occur in that area, then that increase in the property tax money could flow to the RDA, and the RDA could use that to help with development within that area. So it could improve infrastructure, it could build roads, it could help with property, it could help with demolition. There's a number of things that the RDA can use that money for, but they have to get the approval of the taxing entities, i.e. the school district, county, the city, to use that money. So it's a tool for an incentive for development. That's what it is. And that's basically why we create this project area. The reason we selected this area is Roy did a focus Roy plan, and that plan indicated that this area had some potential for additional economic development to the city. And that economic development means that that can bring additional revenues into the city. And we felt like, and you as a board, in earlier discussions we had earlier this year, felt like it was worthwhile to pursue the creation of the project area. So the way this will work is right now there is nothing being proposed. We have, and I want to really stress that, we have no proposal for development within this project area. Nobody's come to us, nobody's done it. In fact, UTA has some limitations under state statute of how many TODs they can do. I believe that number is 8. And as I recall, they already have 8. So unless that legislation changes, then they are pretty much set with how many TODs they could pursue. So we don't have anything or anybody or any developer or anyone that's come to us and said we want to do a project. We're only putting into place a tool that would be available and would help us control what kind of development would take place on that property. Because if they want the incentive, then they're going to have to abide by our rules. And so that's another reason why we're moving forward with this.
Can I ask how long the CRA lasts?
We are proposing in this, and again, we have to get this approved by the taxing entities. We're looking at a 20-year project area, but that is what the budget indicated. 75% of the property tax, or the tax increment, for a 20-year period of time. But that still has to go through an approval process. But that's what our budget has indicated.
We'll have some public comment here in a second. Please, you hold that and you can tell us what you're thinking. Hold on.
So let me just outline a couple of issues that have come to the staff's attention regarding this project area. First of all, I want to make it very clear that the redevelopment agency does not have any power to condemn property, period. That's even outlined in the plan. It clearly states the redevelopment agency does not have the power of eminent domain in this project area. There's been a discussion that we've heard from some people that perhaps somebody's gone around to indicate that they're out to condemn your property. That is false. That is not true. We do not have that power of eminent domain. We're not allowed to have that power of eminent domain under the statute. And that clearly states that in the plan. Section 613 of the plan makes that statement. The second thing I want to make clear is that we are not planning. The redevelopment agency is not a planning agency. Any development, anything that's proposed in that project area would have to go through the city's development process. The plan allows us to review, after that's gone through the city process, we have the right to review what's being developed to determine if we want to provide any kind of participation with the tax increment incentive. But we do not plan. So the city will have to determine what are going to be the standards, what's going to be the zoning, and everything else for that development. That is not the redevelopment agency's responsibility. And our plan clearly states in a number of sections that it is not the redevelopment's responsibility to plan. It's our responsibility to make sure that there's a good development and that it meets all of the city ordinances and it meets the city standards, but it is not the RDA's responsibility to do that. Those were two issues that had come to our attention that perhaps people were concerned about, and I just wanted to make it clear before we got into the public hearing that that is not allowed. So with that,
let me just ask one question, if you don't mind then. If a piece of property is excluded, can that piece of property find its way back in if the property owner decides they'd like to come back in and participate?
The only way that could happen, Mr. Chair, is if the redevelopment agency wanted to amend their project area to allow that in. And in that case, we would have to go through the same process that we're going through today. We'd have to notify all the property owners, we'd have to have a public hearing, we'd have to change the plan, and we'd have to go through that. In most cases, and I've done a number of these throughout the state of Utah, in most cases, the redevelopment agency has made, once a decision's been made because a property owner wants to be taken out, they've abided with that and they have not put them back in, even at the request.
Then, last question I would have then, can you explain then what is the rights of the property owner in this process?
Yes, this is really property owner driven because again, the redevelopment agency, the creation of this is we're creating up a tool, an incentive. And if a property owner wants to develop their property and it makes sense with the redevelopment agency, it complies with the general plan of the city, it complies with the ordinance of the city, it meets all of those standards, then they can come to us and say, hey, I'm going to build something brand new on my property and I need some help, whether it be with building permit fees, whether it be with doing engineering, whether it be, hey, the city's requiring me to put in some additional infrastructure. We could say, well, okay, your development's going to increase your property tax value by X amount of dollars, and that makes sense, so we'll participate with you by giving that incentive back to you to let it happen. It's property owner driven. Property owners have to agree to sell their property. The property owners, if somebody approaches them, they have to agree if they want to sell it. If they don't want to develop, fine, that's their choice. We have no leverage whatsoever when it comes to forcing any kind of development. Again, it's simply under the state law, we have to create a project area if we want to use the incentive of tax increment financing. It's the only way we can do it. And if nothing develops, then there's no tax increment. So development has to occur for us to utilize that tool.
Okay, board, any other comments before we go into public comment period?
Remind me again, what did the taxing entities, do they have to agree to it?
Yes, the taxing entities have to. We have not taken any of our,
And when would that happen?
we will try to do that within the next 90 days.
But you're looking at a 20-year time span?
We're looking at a 20-year project area at 75% increment is what we're going to request.
Is that typical?
Yes. In fact, most of the project areas created in Weber County are 20-year project areas. There's a few that are 15-year. I know of one that was 12, but for the most part, most of the project areas, if you go look what has been created in the Weber County Recorder's Office would have those listed. Most of those are 20-year project areas.
Good question. Okay, let's go ahead then. Do I have a motion then to go into public comment period and allow the public to give us their thoughts and questions?
I make a motion, we go into public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, if you would then, if you are a property owner in this affected area, would you mind, if you have something to say, please come up and give us your name and your address. If you're a property owner, I'd like to hear from them first, and then we'll open up for all comments. Just please give us your name and address, and then give us your thoughts and comments.
Todd Potter. My address is 2449 West, 4000 South. So the way I'm understanding is there's going to be a property tax increase to do this, or there's not going to be?
No.
Not at all?
No tax increase. Redevelopment agencies do not levy taxes.
That's right.
Okay.
No problem.
We've already had one increase by being annexed in, which is a pretty good increase that we said we wouldn't get. And if we don't want to be in this redevelopment thing, what does it take to opt out of it?
Just say right now that you'd like to be taken out of the project area. That's all you have to do.
Okay. Without better information to us, I would like to be opted out of it.
Okay. Now, if I understand the comment you made earlier, Randy, if in fact at any time a developer comes in and says that they want to basically purchase this property owner's property for whatever reason, then if they're out of the system and out of the project area, then the city cannot provide any assistance at all to any developer or to the property owner in terms of providing any assistance. Is that what I heard?
That is correct. The
For the
tax
next
increment,
20 years.
the tax increment could not be used. If he had an issue where, you know, there was, the developer says, for me to buy your property, I need you to take care of the following, and that was some costs. And he came to the city and said, okay, can I use your RDA to do that? The answer would be no. You're not in the project area, so you don't qualify.
Okay.
Well, if he chooses to sell his property in the future, there's no additional incentive from this because he opted out of it, correct?
That is correct. He's not in the project area, so he doesn't have any benefit from the project area.
Okay.
So really, it doesn't cost anything to be in the project
No,
area?
there's no tax increase. In fact, property owners would not have known about this had we not sent out the public hearing notice.
So I think we have to all just understand that, again, all the tax, what's the word, it just left me.
Tax increment?
Rents, yeah.
Incentive.
Yeah, they have to agree upon it first. So basically what is happening is there's a portion that they're gonna say, okay, we're gonna give a portion of our taxes that are coming to us to put into this redevelopment area. That's why there's no tax increases, because they're gonna agree to take a portion of theirs to put it into this project.
There's no tax increase because, number one, we're not a taxing entity
Right.
ourselves. We
Right.
can't levy a tax. So we live off or receive the participation from the taxes that are already being levied.
And then from that pool.
We would get a percentage of that.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Correct. And then if a developer comes into us and wants to take a portion and say, I like this area and I want to develop it or whatever, then we have that incentive money that's in that pool to either help the property owner or to help the developer. So depending on where it goes. And to even help the property owner, it means maybe even, help in relocation or help improve, you know, if this developer's coming in and saying, this is what I want, maybe your property stays and we help you improve it to help it be with that. But without this, having that pool there, then that doesn't give us any incentive money, if that kind of like makes sense. It took me a little bit of time to get it in my head exactly kind of how it worked. So if we, I mean, because we don't have to do anything, because the property owner, because a developer could still come in right now and say, I want to develop on this area, and look at your property and say, I want to develop on this. And then you decide, yes or no, we're going to do it. All this does for us is to give that little bit of extra incentive to help the area, whether it's for the property owner or whether it's for the developer, depending on what works best. That's all this really does.
What you said is absolutely correct. The tax increment can be used for many different uses. It can be used to help purchase the price of the property. It can be used to help pay for the relocation of the cost. If that business would like to look to another location and would like some assistance to help with that relocation, that tax income can be used to help with that relocation.
Right.
It can help to improve infrastructure that might need to be built in that area. It can help with beautification. It can help with any of the costs associated with the development. So, and that development, whether it be a developer or whether it be a property owner, that tool is available.
Right.
The key is two things. One, there has to be an increase in above in the property tax. And two, we have to get the approval of the taxing entities to utilize that.
Yeah, and if they don't agree, then this basically drops.
Right. Even if
then
we
it doesn't go anywhere.
If we
You say right there a tax increase.
No.
Listen to me.
No, it's a
Listen to
percentage.
the words that we're saying. There is, I don't know how to say it any better than no. There is no tax increase because you're in a redevelopment project area. However, if the school district decided that they needed to raise taxes because they needed to bond for 2 new high schools, all right, then they're going to raise their taxes. And you're going to have that tax increase whether you're in an RDA or you're out of an RDA.
Right.
What I'm saying is the RDA does not levy a tax.
It's just a percentage.
No, it's not even a percentage.
No.
We
So is it-
collect,
It's a
we
recollect.
collect a percentage of the property tax that's already in place.
Yeah, it's a redistribution of other people's property
Exactly.
taxes.
So, for example,
Taxing entities'
Okay.
property.
right, so if the property taxes, let's say we had a development occur in that project area and the value of that property, that development, generated $1 million in new property tax. And if we had the approval of the taxing entities to participate at 75%, then $750,000 of that new $1 million in property tax would come to the redevelopment agency, and $250,000 of it would go back to the taxing entities.
But that's only after a development has been made on the property that
Yes.
increases the value, which changes the property tax.
Right.
So if they just leave their property alone, taxes aren't going to go up unless you said various entities increase, which is regardless of this.
Right.
Well, but let's make
But
it
then we're also
absolutely
agreeing-
clear. What are the challenges we have?
No.
It happened recently, in the last 2 years, my home value
Right.
went up $100,000. And that's the problem. I mean, they just increased it. So therefore, my property tax, to your point, my property tax went up, but not because there was a tax increase,
Right.
but because of the value of my property was assessed higher than it was 2 years earlier.
Exactly, so that's a really good point, Mr. Chair. The redevelopment agency and the city doesn't deal with assessed values.
That's a county
The
issue.
county comes in and assess your property.
Right.
We don't assess property, that's a county function. And if the county comes in because the market has changed, then they have to, by law, every 5 years, they have to assess your entire community.
Right.
And generally, they can't do that, they couldn't do that all at one time. So what they do is they divide your city into sections, and 1 year, the north side might get assessed, then the next year it's the central part, then the next year it's the west, and then the next year it's the south. And so every year you may see sections of your community go up in property tax because they reassess. Now that reassessment, as we all know, property values are going up. That reassessment may increase your property tax. That's true. But again, the redevelopment agency, because you are in this area, doesn't mean that we are going to levy a new tax.
And it doesn't mean that you're agreeing to sell your property.
No.
I think that was one of the
No,
concerns
you
he
don't
had.
have to sell your property. This is.
It's your property. It's your choice to do with it what you want.
If you want to keep it for the next 100 years, the best of luck to you. That's great. But if you happen to have an opportunity where somebody walks into the door and says, look, we're in the process of acquiring property because we'd like to buy it, we'd like to do a project, are you interested in selling? And you said, yeah, I'll sell for the right price. You set that price. And if the developer can pay that price, great. If he can't, then what he will probably do is come to the redevelopment agency and say, I'll use his name just because he's the only property owner that's talked. Mr. Parter would like to have $2.5 million for his property. I can only afford $2 million. Will you as a redevelopment agency participate with me to give him the other $500,000? And we can then do the analysis of that tax increment that new development's going to generate, and we can say, you know what? That project is going to give us enough tax increment that we would be willing to help the developer pay the purchase price.
That's if he's in the project. If
That's
he
if he's
chooses
in
to
the
get out of
project.
it,
But if
then
he's
there's
out,
no
then there's
potential
nothing
help.
we can do.
No
No, there's no incentive. There's nothing we can do. So, but again, I want to make this really clear. This is a property owner-driven process. The property owners make the decision if they want to sell. The property owner makes the decision if they want to develop. The property owner makes the decision if they want to be part of or not part of this project area. And if Mr. Parter had taken the time to call us up and talk with us, I would have been happy to answer those questions.
Okay, hold on just a second. Let's, go ahead.
Chris Weekman.
Yeah, give us your name and address.
It's the same address he has, 2449 West, 4000 South.
Oh.
We're number 2.
Okay.
If we decide, it's subdivided, we own a piece of property, if we decide we didn't want to sell it, and the developer came to them folks and said, hey, they won't sell it to us, and they come to you, and you're saying, well, I think that's a good idea, we think it's going to make money, are you going to come in and demand that we sell it?
No.
Or
No.
are they, I mean, I'm asking the question.
No, we can't.
Because that's what I'm saying, or
That's
say,
an
well,
eminent
okay,
domain.
you, 3 of you out of the 7 people down there, 7 properties have said, no, we don't want it.
It's your property. It's your choice if you sell it or
This is
not.
a hell of a deal for the city. We want to develop this. How can we get your property? What incentives is the city going to have against us to come and get it?
Okay.
Well, I can explain that. There is no incentives for us. I mean, again, we can't.
You got a developer that wants to come in and take it. And you're there to help the developer.
Sir, I'm making it very clear that under the redevelopment process, if you don't want to sell your property, you don't want to participate in your property and in the development, then that's fine. I mean, we could sit down and encourage the developer, well, go give him the money he wants, but we can't say, well, let's come up with a plan to make it happen. It's just not going to happen. I've had many project areas where property owners do not want to sell, and the developer has taken his project out of that community and put it in another community. That's simply what the process will be. Or he's taken out of that area and sent it someplace else. Again, when we created this boundary, we took in that west side of the tracks because we thought there'd be some opportunities. But frankly, as I talked with Matt, what we really see as the real good opportunity development is the UTA front runner station and the property adjoining that. And my opinion would be if we have concerns with those property owners on the west, we should amend this project area and take them out and just focus on that UTA portion of development, because I think that that's really the piece that we had the most concern for doing. But we thought the tool would be of some benefit to those property owners on the west if they ever wanted to do something different, change it, put something else on there, at least they had the opportunity to come in and ask for the increment.
Okay, comment
That would
again? Name and just give us your
It's
name.
Chris Wickland again.
Okay,
The-
go ahead.
The only thing that we've had come to us is there's a development going to the south of us. Housing. They have to have a way out.
Correct,
We're the only way out.
correct.
That doesn't, what does that do for the UTA? What are you gonna put in there? It's wide enough for a road and a setback with some green, grass, trees. What's that gonna do? It's not wide enough for anything.
Understand. I
You
think
have
in
to have
that
a
particular
setback so
project,
far from the walkway that the DNRG still owns. They don't give that up.
Agreed.
Your access, you can use it, but the railroad never sells or gives up anything. It's theirs.
I think if I remember right on that particular project, the recommendation the city had to those developers was, talk to the landowners, see if you can negotiate a price.
And then they approached him and told him, we're gonna get it. The city's gonna help us get it.
Well, and
And that's why I'm asking, so, you
Does it
know,
happen?
what is the benefit? No, I'm just saying, that you've got tax dollars coming from residential that you can fluctuate for years up and down the assessment. Why, look at us, why wouldn't the city come and say, well, you know, there's only 7 of you, we need this. That's what we're afraid of, is you're gonna come in and say, well, guess what? It's blighted, it's, you know, and we're just gonna take it.
That's eminent domain. This does not allow for eminent domain.
But they don't have the right to. You folks do.
It does not allow for eminent
But
domain.
if they come to, then say, we need help obtaining this, this is the only way to develop this piece down here, it's never gonna happen. You know?
Well,
Or
and a good point.
we're gonna put you somewhere else, we're gonna help relocate you. What we do, nobody wants this.
Okay, well.
Nobody wants it. It's where it's at.
Okay.
In the county we were in, okay, we're gonna take you out of the county and put you in the city. For what? I mean, we're still doing the same thing, but somewhere down the line, it's not been all exposed what the plan is. In the end, and now we've got all this bordered out here, and it's all, most of it's undeveloped. So what, but it's little stuff. What can you put in there?
Well.
I mean, the city usually has a plan, right? A 20-year plan or is there anything to see what they're trying to do in that area right now?
Well, that's a good question. Let me see if I can answer that one. There's a general plan amendment that is in the process working through that. It'll come into the planning commission, ultimately come to the city council. And there is some changes in codes that are being considered. We'll make that very clear. All people within a certain area around that particular development will get notification. But that's the city side, not the RDA board side, although it's the same members. But that process is in work in terms of what you're saying is, what is the future of that particular area?
Yeah, what is the...
And you'll have a voice in that process as that's unfolding. I think if I understand this piece right now, it's only suggesting is, if the property owner has an interest to want to participate in the future, to do something with their property, sell it, or they want to do their development, then the city is saying under this proposal that we would be a partner then to help you make that happen, to be able to see that, whatever it is you have a vision of your property. We don't have eminent domain here, so that means we can't take it. CRAs legally cannot take your property. So you have absolute control of what you're going to do with your property. I think the conversation really has to be is that, and I recognize this is probably the hardest part of this, do you trust us to make sure, that's why I say it's the harder part. Do you trust us to basically say that you can see some value in this for you as a property owner?
We have an idea what our property's worth, but do you feel it's worth the same?
Well, then let me offer you a thought process.
I can't go do anywhere in your city what we're doing now. They don't want it. Where are you gonna put us?
Well, okay.
If you came in and
Let
said,
me
"Oh,
offer
people
this
trade
different
this,"
twist
you
to
know,
that.
What if you get to the point of retirement and decide you want to sell your
I got a ways
property?
to go from that. Unfortunately, my dad doesn't, but I'm gonna hold it behind him.
Let me offer this comment then. If a developer, just hypothetically, was to walk into you and simply say, you know what the property value is? I'll give you 2 times, I'll give you 3 times the value of your property.
Understood.
Would you consider it?
At that point, there'd be something to think about.
Okay.
But on the other point, what you said, everything's been fine for the last 7, 8 years that we've been down there. We're in the county, all of a sudden there's change, there's change, there's something moving. And now this, and they're not used to change that fast. Okay, if you see us all blocked off in this area, we want to know what's happening. Not just, what is the immediate plan for that? You're saying RDA development.
Yes.
But what kind of development and how soon?
Well, okay, so that question,
We
let me
don't
make sure we
know.
understand.
Nobody's approached us
what's
with the
taking place
developer.
there.
But we've been approached by developers down on the end saying, that we've told them no.
Yes.
We already know that you have to have a 60-foot setback for a road to
Yes.
go for 2 lanes, curb gutter the whole way down,
Yes.
in and out, and that's gonna take it 40 feet
That's right.
into our stuff. Well, where are we
Yes.
gonna go?
And by the way, that's the second developer's approached when I've been a city council member. They also want to do a townhouse development down there, and it didn't get passed.
Okay, because they
So-
couldn't get out.
Well, and the key would be is that developers could not negotiate with
Yes.
the property owners to
Okay.
make that happen. So
But
our
like I
role
say,
there.
see, understand that, like I say, we've been approached, told no, and all of a sudden we're in the county, and the next thing you know, everybody's, squaring things up, taking, making the boundaries square, and we're now in your control,
We're
not
in
the
the
county.
city council, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Here's
So-
the piece I want to make sure. To your question is, what's the future? I can honestly tell you right now is we're not sure what that's going to be, but it is being looked at. A contractor was hired recently to give some conceptual ideas of what's going to happen in your area. And before that ever gets approved, it's going to go public. And you'll have all the opportunity to voice your thoughts on that. Does it fit? Does it work? Is it better to keep it as an industrial operation, or is it better to zone it as residential? Is it better to make it more commercial? What's the right zoning for that particular property? All that will be flushed out, all that will take public input, and we'll have some opportunities now to refine what that vision is. It's important, what I want to make sure we understand, it's important is you are the property owner.
Yeah.
You have rights to your property. The key to this conversation has to be, is that do you feel comfortable enough with the government to be a partner in the possibilities over the next 20 years? Or do you feel uncomfortable that says, I'd rather be just left alone and then basically be excluded? And as a property owner, I think you heard, you have that decision. All we're going to say is this, okay? And I'll be blunt as the mayor, I'll tell you, or as the chairman of the board. We're going to move Roy City forward, okay? We have no choice. I'm tired of basically paying our services and our requirements on the backs of property tax. We need to build an infrastructure of sales tax. We have to start bringing revenue
You got
in.
more outgo than you got income.
And we got to do that. Otherwise, we can't continue the services and without raising property taxes. And property taxes is tough for me, and it should be tough to anybody that's elected in an office. So we're going to find ways to help us build a strong, better sales tax base. That's what we're going to do. So the key would be is, how does that front runner station fit into that? That's going to be discussed. How can we best do that with UTA, who's the biggest property owner at that location? That's going to be discussed. The key to this conversation really has to be to all the property owners. Do you feel comfortable enough with government that you want to be a partner to this, knowing you have control, or do you feel uncomfortable with government and simply exclude yourself? And we're saying is, tell us. And if the answer to that question is, we don't want to basically play, I think we have one property owner that says, just keep us out of it, that's okay.
But up until recently, we weren't involved with anything that was going on. As, you can't let everything you're doing out, but we'd like to be involved.
Well, you're going to be
in what's
involved.
involved.
This is for
So do we
sure the
trust
first
up
step.
until now? No, we're gun shy. Because, okay, this is going to
Understand.
happen, this is going to happen, but then it really happened.
The city has already promised to have fire hydrants put out.
Yes.
Out but across the street from my place. They did not do it. They were going to put them by next to my place. They did not do it. That was promised a long time ago, 30 years ago.
Yes.
They lied about that. I was told by UTA when they put the walking path in that Roy City had to put a fence along that walking path. Did Roy City do that? No.
No.
So every time we've been told something, we've been lied to about this stuff.
Yeah,
And you want us to trust you now?
No.
You gotta show us some good faith on
Exactly.
your end before we can trust you
I
and say,
agree.
yeah, let's do.
I agree with you. Let me just make it
Granted, I would
clear.
love to have a developer come in and say, hey, let's be partners, and let's develop this piece of property.
No.
Make it worth $5 million, put in some condos on top, or put in some businesses across the bottom of it, and develop it and make some more money than you're making. I'd love to do that.
Okay,
But do I trust you guys to do it? No,
I understand.
because
But
Roy
let me
City
make it-
has
let me make
outright
this-
lied to us about
Let
it.
let me make this absolutely clear, so there's no
It
confusion.
may not be you
Hold on,
in particular,
understand.
but it has been Roy City. Still, you are part of Roy City. so-
Understand. Let me just make it clear, okay? You were in the county. You were in the county.
Yes.
Roy City had no jurisdiction
Over the
to come
county,
into the
yes.
county and basically put infrastructure in there. What bothered me the most about this, and I've been at this thing now 4 years, and Carlene, you've been at this a lot longer, is the fact is that you and other places within the city, who are now city, but were county at the time, you didn't get the infrastructure you needed. When that annexation was approved, and let me make it clear, okay? The county divorced you. When I had the first opportunity to deal with the annexation, I says, I, as an elected official, never want to have that conversation again with those residents. They didn't want to come into Roy, and I was ready to basically says, let's just be good partners. You can benefit from it. Stay in the county as long as you want, we'll be fine. But then all of a sudden, the county divorced all of them, and it put it right back in our plate, and we said, we got to fix this, and we did. We tried to make it as comfortable as we possibly can, but here's the point. Your infrastructure...
$800 a year more for me.
But if you go to that tax record, let me make this clear, I've done this. You go to the tax record, you look at every one of the property tax rates. Every one of those property tax rates except one in your particular area basically dropped. What got you and most other people in trouble, unfortunately, is the county assessor basically went there and increased the value of your property. You didn't do a thing. Your property increased value. And when they did, just like mine did and everybody in the city base did, your property tax went up. You can look at the numbers. They're absolutely clear. I was frustrated along with a lot of other people. A lot of other people.
I looked at the numbers.
And it'll show you every one of those tax rates went down. So the only way your property tax went up is because your property value went up. I'm just telling you how it is. So here's my point to the conversation is, we couldn't do anything for you when you're in the county. We couldn't.
But I can't imagine my property tax going up $800 over, what was it?
2-year period.
$100,000? Less than $100,000?
My property went up $100 and some odd thousand dollars in 2
Mine went up
years.
mine
and I
went up
can't explain that.
$30,000, I think is what my property tax went up, for the value.
But
My
it's the
taxes
value.
went up $800.
Okay, look at your thing. And the other piece is, without getting into detail in here, is because you were in the county and you approved a county assessment that paid for fire services. The law says if you approved it when that property was in the county, you have to live with that assessment. So if you look at that, there's a portion of the fire department, the Weber County Fire District, that every county person still has to pay for. I don't like that. I don't understand it, but if you look at your tax record, it's in there. But here's what I'll ask you to say. I'm just asking you to say, this board and the city council is going to move Roy City forward. We're going to improve the infrastructure. We're going to improve the sales tax. We're going to do everything we can to basically make this a better city. So we're not putting the taxes on the backs of the property taxes on the backs of our residents. We're going to do everything we can. We're asking you to consider this. If you think that as a property owner, you might be able to benefit from this CRA approach, then I'd ask you to consider it. If you believe that, in essence, I don't have any part of that, you have every right to back out. And surely, as you stated, government has not been friendly to you, okay, over the last few years. I'm saying this. You build trust in people. You don't expect it. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm not even asking you to trust this board. But I'm going to say this to you. We've got the best interest of Roy City at mind, and we're going to make a difference in this city. We would like to have you to consider being part of this. If you'd like to try it, let's be a partner in this process. If you're saying it's no, I'll wait a few years, maybe I'll wait 20 years before I'll do anything, that's your choice, and you surely have a right to do that. But just consider this. You have property that could be valuable to the city and valuable, okay, to the broader community. If a developer, or even yourself, you got a great piece of property there. If you say to yourself, I want to take part of this and I'd like some help to make my business better, then why cannot we be partners to make that happen? And we're ready to step up. But you have to make a choice. This CRA issue is moving forward, okay? With you, love to have you.
Without me.
But without you, that's fine, okay? But it's going to move forward. Fair enough? Please, your name and address.
My name is Ed Weekland. My property is 2449 West, 4000 South, number 2. Just got a couple of comments. I received this package in the mail, and when I opened it, I couldn't make heads or tails out of it. If I was a surveyor, I might be able to figure out some of the plan. And I know I was invited to Mr. Andrews' office to ask any questions, but I don't have enough information there to form a question. But what I do have is some anxiety we've had over the last couple of weeks. And you kind of addressed it a little bit. We have had developers come down and approach us to buy property. The last we heard from them, we don't need to buy it, the city's going to condemn it and take it. So we get this. And then you said, trust you. There was a meeting 2 years ago. City council had in the building next door downstairs. And after the city council meeting, there was another meeting downstairs with the UTA and the city to discuss development of the front runner. And they had some pretty maps and it was all laid out and what they're going to do. And one of the people from the UTA says, well, what about this property right here just west? We could put some development in there. And one of the city council members says, well, yeah, we can do that. And UTA says, well, how will we get the property? And the city council member said, we'll take it. So, no, I don't have a great deal of trust. Since you've been elected, Mr. Dandler, or Mayor Dandler, I do have more trust. Before, and I trust Andy, and I'm getting to trust Mr. Andrews. But trust, like you said, takes time to get there. But like I said, when it's got here, first thing I thought was doom and destruction. And I've heard a lot of bad things about RDA in Ogden, maybe not this gentleman, but where they did take people's property, said, eminent domain, here's what we think your property's worth, take it or leave it. And I understand that can still be done.
Let me make it clear, okay? The RDA board has no authority to basically take your property. Now, does the city council? Yes. I'll be blunt. Does UDOT decide to put a road in? Yes.
But the RDA was the fuse, that was the match with the fuse that got the thing going.
If the RDA basically, under the RDA rules at the time, there probably was provisions on that. But we have not done that. But let me make it clear, and Randy, you can confirm this. This is a community reinvestment area, not a redevelopment area. It's a community reinvestment area. There is no provision within the state law that allows the CRA to take eminent domain.
Except under eminent domain, it allows the city to
That's a different conversation. But I don't think, to be honest with you,
we're just lay people. We really don't understand the rarefied atmosphere that you folks understand. You know, listening to your early conversation, I can see how difficult some of the decisions are. But again, we just have to go what we know and the horror stories we've had in the past.
I understand.
And so, like I said, we've had some, questionable concerns about it, and you've addressed a lot of it here. It makes it a lot clearer. And I just want to let you know where our fear is coming from. I bought the property where I'm at after I retired. It was my place to stay and work. And now I see somebody wants to put in a multi-family high-density housing. And I don't want to turn it loose. So that's just where I'm coming from.
And I understand that, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think those are really good comments. There are two, under the redevelopment statute, there are two types of project areas. There's one that's called an urban renewal, which is the one that Ogden has used in some cases, and then there's the community reinvestment area. The urban renewal, which is a blight-funded type of project area, would allow for the eminent domain. But we are doing a community reinvestment area. And the state law does not allow, clearly states in the state law, that in a community reinvestment area, there is no power of eminent domain by the redevelopment agency. So we do not have the power to condemn. But the eminent domain, like you have clearly stated, Mr. Chairman, is allowed with cities, state, those other agencies. But the redevelopment agency would not be one that would ever take any property. It can't.
And for the city to do it, they would have to prove a public purpose. So they're not able to do it for a private development.
That is correct, and that's another thing.
So it would have to be a public road for a public purpose. If there's a subdivision back there.
And that's where I'm at. I am on a blockage from this developer, who's the one that told us the city is planning on taking our property.
But with the
He
private,
needs that property
If
to
he
get
wants your-
access to 4,000.
he would have to buy it.
He's
because
gonna
it's-
have to, if he wants that property, he's gonna have to buy it from you. We're not.
Because it's not a public purpose, like if they're widening 4,000 or something like that, that's the public
He's a-
purpose,
he's
but
a
not for a
private
private
developer.
developer.
Since Mayor Chief Griner was elected to the state legislature, and he and Mayor Godfrey changed the eminent domain law in 2015 to go to where it is today. If you read it, it says the city or the municipality can take property for roads, parks, subdivisions, almost anything that the city declares. And that was Mayor Godfrey that screwed over the
Well,
city.
we still gotta, we have to have a public purpose, and that's why you can take a road and all that, but it wouldn't be right for us to come in and go, hey, we like this development, we're taking your property. We've indicated to them, if they wanna do their development, they're gonna have to buy the property from you, and,
Once the
but we're not
development-
gonna come in, if you don't, Ed, if you don't want to sell your property to them, that's your decision. We're not gonna come in and take
You know,
your
Andy,
property.
I knew there was a reason I like you. Thank you very much for stating that.
When the development's done, now, if they get through it, they turn it over to the city when they're done with their development. No,
First thing-
I just moved into one in Ogden City.
Okay.
Before being into subdivision, same thing. The developer was in there for 10 years.
Yes.
Put in a whole area, and when it was done, they walked in and handed them the keys.
Let me just make.
The roads, but they say the roads, that's what we're concerned about, is that road.
There's no benefit for the city at this point to own that property. If there's a road requirement, you have a good argument, but there's no reason to own that. Here's the reason why I want to make that clear to you, okay?
Sorry, it's just sticking there
Roy City doesn't get any property tax
from the road.
on any property we own.
Okay.
We don't get property tax as income to the city to pay for the services on any schools, any charter schools in the city. We don't get any property tax on that. Every facility, including this, gets no property tax. Roy City owns a big piece of the airport, surprisingly. And Ogden does not pay Roy City any property tax on all of that property they owned on the airport that's in Roy City. So to make the point, we have lots of parks. And there's a lot of land that we have parks. We do that in large part for the benefit of the citizens. But we get no dime out of that. In fact, oftentimes it costs us money, which is a service, a public service we like providing. But there is no value for us as a city to own your property. Because if we buy that, if we take that, we don't get any money for that. Now, if the answer to the question would be is if we can help facilitate that so that a developer can come in and make a bigger project of it and we can become a partners in that, then we can do that as an RDA. But I'm telling you, you have to really look at this from a broader perspective. It simply says, why would the city want to do this? And we don't. What we want to do is we want to partner with the property owners. We want to partner with you to basically say, what is the possibilities here? And if the possibilities suggest is we can collaborate together to help you to build whatever it is we can build that brings more value to you, and more importantly, you're not going to like this comment, make your property more valuable, then we create an incentive for us to basically want to be a partner, because the more value your property is, the more property tax you're going to pay us.
Mayor, if I could
Please.
make a comment on that. We were talking a little bit about the eminent domain. The cities have the eminent domain power regardless of whatever happens, but I think from your point of view, you're looking at what increases the value of my property. By being included in this CRA, now you haven't lost any rights that you didn't already have. Nobody can force you to sell your property at all. That's your decision, no matter what the city wants. If you want to sell your property, that's up to you. But what it does do for you that you don't have by being outside of it is that now you have an added value to somebody who may want to purchase your property, because he can buy your property, but guess what? That developer can get some additional help from the city that makes your property more valuable by being in it. So you haven't, by this CRA, let's just forget about the eminent domain issue at all. That's the same regardless. But by joining this CRA, you don't lose any rights. It doesn't give the right of eminent domain. You don't lose any rights. You just now have an added value to your property because you're part of this, that you might be able to help and sell it to a developer or sell it to anybody. You're not forced to, but you could sell it to them because they would want to buy your property more because they could get money from the city to build infrastructure, to take care of sewers and that. That makes it more, gives me more incentive as a developer to buy your property, and makes your property more value than if you stay out of it.
That's right.
So that's all I'm trying to say. You haven't lost anything, but you've gained something.
Right. Okay. Great comments. Thank you. Okay. Name, address, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board. My name is Jordan Swain. I'm with UTA.
Oh, thank you.
And I just wanted to commend you for your efforts here. I think this is a very exciting project. Of course, I can only speak for the properties east of the rail. And I also want to reiterate that certainly UTA has no immediate aim to develop that property, to enter into any joint development because of the cap that was described earlier. But I think that these types of projects demonstrate to the legislature that communities do support transit-oriented development, that cities do value transit-oriented development and so forth. So I and UTA are in full support of this. We're very excited about this. And I just wanted to get that on the record.
Okay, thank you for your input. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody like to share? Please just step up to the mic and give us your name and address. Thank you.
Diane Wilson, 4302 South, 2675 West.
Diane, can you pull that mic down a little bit closer to you? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So, because the city council wants to increase tax base, and because the city council is the RDA board as well, does that give a conflict of interest because they're the same people? And the other gentleman mentioned, does that give that spark to possibly, now that it's in an RDA, motivate the city council to promote changes or possibly consider eminent domain because now that extra spark is there? That's the first question. Should I do both questions? The second question is, does this CRA RDA give an incentive to the city council to change zoning against property owner desires and or, yeah.
Randy, you're writing some answers down, I hope.
I am, but if you had something you wanted to add, just feel free to.
The incentive, that's an interesting point, because city councils and RDA boards are oftentimes the same people. They're separate entities and they function separately within the city as two separate organizations, but they obviously reside, okay, with the same membership in terms of directing. To answer your question is there to some collaboration that oftentimes exists because there's a conflict between that? I'd like to say no, but the fact of the matter is there always is. You got the same people that are involved in that, and when you have that, you can't help but think that maybe some of the interests that may be taking place in the meeting would be is how would this fit within the city council decision and how does this fit within RDA decision? You've got to look at all sides. I made a public comment that basically said this: we want to move the city forward, but the city has to move forward not just with an RDA board, but it also has to move forward in large part by the city council. Because the city council is going to change the laws, it's going to move this city forward by doing some really good things to help us promote sales tax to make it more profitable. Only the city council can do that, okay? So in a broader context, I will tell you is, yes, it can be perceived to be conflicting, but interesting enough, okay, we try to keep the operations separate. Separate because they are separate by statute. This is a Title 17 process we're going through. When we talk about land use issues, that's a Title 10 issue by state law. So we literally have to think differently. But I can honestly say to you is that there is connectivity between the CRAs that are being approved and being moved and changes that will take place in terms of incentivizing and helping us to build a stronger tax base. And I'm speaking of sales tax base. It's going to happen. Now, the question in terms of...
Well, I think you answered that very well. I think that, again, the redevelopment board is a separate entity. The state statute does say that the same legislative body that makes up the city is also the board of the redevelopment agency. There have been times where there was one city, and it was Ogden, that did that differently. And the legislature didn't like that, so they changed it and made it so that everybody is the same. With that being said, usually the process would be is that we want to make sure that when a developer comes in to us to develop anything, the first thing we tell him is you need to go over to the city side and you need to talk to the city and go through the city process to make sure the city approves your project. We don't want to get involved. We're kind of a gap financing group. Do we like your project? We could tell the developer we do like the project, but there's still a city process you have to go through. So how we try to distinguish that, if you can, is we make them go to the city first, go get all those city approvals, get everything done on the city side, then come back to us and talk to us about how we can participate with them in the tax increment. Now sometimes, and developers will sometimes come to the redevelopment agency first and say, I'd like to do this project, but I'm going to need some assistance. Will you be willing to assist us? And that's where we do that analysis. Well, does this project still need to go through a city process and everything else? I'm helping South Salt Lake City in a process, and they had a developer that actually came in there. Our position was you go to the city, get your application in place, get your application approved by development, get it entitled, and then come back and have a conversation with us. And I think that's probably a good process to try to keep it separate so that it doesn't happen. But there's always that possibility if the city council likes the project, then they're going to most likely as an RDA board approve it. So, but we try to do the distinction by having them go through two separate processes. Your second question was?
Does the CRA give incentive to the city council to change zoning against the property owner's desires?
That's a really good question. Would again, if a piece of property was not zoned for commercial and there was an opportunity for the city to get additional sales tax if it was rezoned, would that happen? I think that would happen whether or not it was in a CRA or it wasn't in a CRA. Because you do have a lot of commercial properties or properties that aren't in CRAs that might be approached to be rezoned. So I don't know if being in the CRA necessarily makes any difference than if it were anywhere else in the community. I don't think that becomes an impact in the decision. And at least that's my personal opinion.
Well,
and if I were the staff working with the redevelopment agency, I think we would certainly have a discussion about, we're looking at the development and the project, how it meets the general plan of the city, how it meets the goals and objectives of the city. Those are the types of things that we probably look at more than is there just this one incentive that could come to us.
I will indicate to you over the last 4 years, and I think I can even speak for the 2 years as the Planning Commission on top of that, the city really has been trying to protect its commercial. And it does so by simply not allowing residential to go in commercial property. And there's evidence of that. We see recently where there was a proposal to put a set of townhouses at a location on 35 in Midland. The property is owned commercial. It fits within assisted living that's being proposed and a charter school that's being proposed. Those were not in question, but the landowner also wanted to come in and says, can I take this piece of property and basically take a portion of that and make residential? And the city council said no. And with that, it now stays commercial, and now the property owners just need to kind of decide what they want to do with it. But right now, there's a good chance that charter school will go in, and there's a good chance that assisted living facility will go in, because they can coexist within that particular commercial property. Anything else, Diane, you wanted to ask us?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else would like to share a thought?
Hi, my name is Paul Sorensen, and I live at 4176 South, 2400 West. It's basically the property that's on the ridge, just UTA's right below us.
Okay.
We put a lot of effort into retaining that property, a lot of money into retaining walls and stuff, and from what I'm hearing, that seems to be the area that everybody's salivating, debating over for what's coming. At the time, 15 years ago, when I bought that property and the rest of us, there's about 30 homeowners there I see that are on that ridge. They were highly prized lots because of the western views and the sunsets, and we were guaranteed by the developer, there were single-family housing was the zoning at the time, and no one could build over a 2-story home, and none of that would block our views out. Then UTA came in, took the property that was down below us and made all kinds of promises. You know, it was going to raise our property values. I'm not sure if it did or it didn't, but we were going to have wildflowers and nice plants and everything else all through there. And I don't know if you've noticed, but they have all died and been cut down now.
We've noticed.
So the goalpost keeps changing on us a little bit, and now with what I'm hearing, what we maybe want to create this a sales tax mecca for the city, which some of it's hard to argue, I get it. But if something like the Station Square apartments were put in along that area right behind us, it would totally negate everything they have and put, you know, maybe a few hundred people's balconies right in our backyard. So what I would like to know is, are we going to take 20 years to figure out what's allowed back there, or are we going to know pretty darn quick for flight or fight purposes what we're going to have behind us there?
Okay, I can just basically, let me just make a comment first. That, as you well know, is a transit-oriented station, for a better word.
It is now. It wasn't at the time any of us built.
The law today says there can only be 8 of those that are developed under UTA. 8 of those are developed in the state. The comment that was made earlier was, unless the legislator changes the law, and there's a good chance that could happen this year or next year, we can't do much. UTA can't do much because they can't put a 9th one in the state. So we don't know what's going to happen. But here's the important part I want to suggest is, that's a city ordinance issue. And it's a discussion the city has to have in terms of trying to define then, what is that going to look like? I would absolutely insist that the residents in that area be a voice in that process to help us define what is that going to look like. Today, you can put a 37-foot house at that location. 37-foot, 2-story, and it's perfectly zoned for that. You can't, as it sits today, zone that any higher. If 37 feet is not right, if 40 feet is right, if something else in there was workable, then I would hope that the residents in that community, because they're all along that skyline, basically have a voice in this process. That has not been flushed out. The Planning Commission is only beginning to look at options at that location, and public hearings are going to be absolutely important, okay, plus workshops to understand what can be done and how best to do it. I will tell you, and the young man from UTA will tell you, UTA has some very expectations at these transit stations. We have to look at that and says, is those expectations something that we can live with? And the answer may very well be, maybe not. But if it's something that we can live with, then maybe what we can do is we can find some harmony between what UTA, the property owner, is needing that to look like and what Royce City is going to allow to go in there. And public input is critical. So I say, when we get to that side, and the city will go to that side, not the RDA board, I would absolutely help you to make sure you're part of that dialogue. And I've reached out to Senator Buxton and says, I'm expecting him to be part of that conversation as well, because he's directly impacted as well. This is an opportunity for the citizens of Roy to voice their position as it relates to how that will be zoned and what's the best for that area. But that's not a CRA issue. CRA only says this: if we can come to some agreement of what that development could be look like, if we can find some solution that works both for the UTA property owner and Roy City Code, then we want to basically say we have some tax incentive funding that can help make that happen and do it right. And the CRA that's being proposed, okay, that's on here, is simply to put a tool in place to allow then an opportunity for us to look at how we can make sure it's done right, and a developer and a partnership. That's what we plan to do. But we don't have a solid plan to what that's gonna look like, and to be very honest with you, I have not heard yet that if the law is gonna be changed as it sits right now. We think it will, but we don't have anything in legislation coming at us that's telling us the law will be changed, only that it's being considered.
Well, I mean, we are running out of space between the lake and the mountains, I get that.
I understand.
But
And you got a great
And I've
view.
sat in other meetings talking about, we need to go vertical in this city, and we need to go high density in this city, and
Help us to then make it right. I'm just
Well,
saying.
well, I don't have any property in the area, so I can't take any advantage of the $2 or $3 million that's being upgraded. We're probably the most affected by it, but we have nothing to gain out of it. But we have a lot of investment to lose, but we really don't have much to gain out of it.
But if we do this right, let me offer this thought.
Well, doing it right's the question, and that's why I'm standing
If we
up
can do it
front.
right and we can generate more value, and by the way, did I mention that UTA property? I bet if we looked at the property records, we're probably not getting a dime in property tax on that property. So my point to the conversation, when it's not, UTA will turn over developer and it will go privatized. UTA has no interest in holding the property for its own value. But if in fact it was in the private hands of a private owner and it was developed right, Royce City can help get the burdens of property tax off of the rest of the residents, because those developments will generate property tax that we can use to provide the service. We have to look at it in terms from that perspective. What's the value to the city? But we got to make sure it's done right.
I just hope in the zoning that it is done right and somewhat copacetic to
Help us. Please, help us be part of that.
That's kind of what I thought I was here for, but I guess that's
You
not
are.
the road. Do we have any time frame of when this Vision 2025?
When do you think the Planning Commission and the city will be presenting some ideas of what that's going to look like? Any ideas yet, Matt?
Yeah, the planning commission's an independent body, and so they kind of do as they wish, and when they're prepared for it, they'll set a public hearing and you'll get notified, because if you're in that area, you'll get notified to attend a planning commission. But really, maybe the first of next year, we could be seeing something come out for the general plan. Shortly thereafter, maybe something for the form-based code, but you'll be notified.
It's really important, Paul. It's really important that the public tell us what they're thinking, help us to shape this. And I would expect everybody sitting up there next to you up there should have a voice in this conversation.
Oh, I think they will. I'm not sure they're engaged enough to know that
Well,
this
we're
is
gonna
what
help
we're
them.
talking about yet.
We're going to help them.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your input. Please, name and address.
Leon Wilson at 4302 South, 2675 West. I, like a lot of these fellows here behind me, are a little skeptical about government and bureaucracy in general, guys. And you probably are also to a certain degree. But as I've seen what's being presented and looked at other communities, etc., I can see no downside in participating, to the point where there's one small section here that has been excluded that we own that I would like to be included. I've talked to Randy about that previously. I just want to make it a point of record that we would want parcel 08052-0037, which is about another half acre, to be included in this project. Thank you very much.
And Randy, you have that information?
Yeah, yes, I did, and let me explain what happened is when we looked at the tax rolls when we were setting that up, we just thought that was part of that subdivision up there, so that's why we left it out. But the law does allow us for that small of a change. If it were more than 2 acres, we'd have to continue the public hearing, but under 2 acres, we can make that boundary adjustment where it is the same property owner. Okay. And we will just have that legal description fixed on that.
Okay.
That'll square that off.
Thank you for your input. Anybody else would like to share a thought? This really is a public comment period. You surely have an opportunity. Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion then to go out of public hearing period?
Mr. Chair, can I ask one clarification though? We did have a property owner who went on record, and I just want to verify if he's still on record to be excluded from the project area, or if he has had second thoughts, or if there was any other property owners that would like to be excluded from the property area. We just need to know that.
Okay. Anybody want, we still okay to take you out of the property, out of the CRA? Help us. Okay, so we still have one. Everybody else okay?
For now.
Okay, for now?
So Mr. Potter does want to be excluded. That is
Okay.
correct. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Do I have then a motion to go out of the public hearing?
Make that motion to go out of public hearing.
Do I have a second? While you're pondering this, board members, the clock is ticking. Anybody want to give me a second to go out of public hearing?
I'll second it.
Oh, wow, yeah, I got nervous there.
No, we want to stay in it all night.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Talk about hesitation.
Let's get this over with.
Okay, thank you. Now, with that, board members, any comments, questions, anything you would like to talk before we go into resolution discussion?
I'm going to go to my same thing that I did on the last two CRAs, in that because I also serve on a board of a taxing entity, I'm going to abstain from any voting on this matter, on both ends. So I just want to be upfront, transparent on that. It's not because I'm not interested. I'll stay in the conversation for a long time, but I'm going to abstain from voting.
Okay, thank you. That's good information to have for the public record. Anything else, council, before we go for a vote?
Do we have to go back into
I have a
council meeting?
No, you stay in the RDA to deal with resolution.
Until we get through
Depending on what you do there,
Okay.
then you'll go back to the
All right.
council meeting.
2 weeks has been a long time.
question.
Yes.
Can we, if we should approve, can we make some kind of travel meeting part of that approval? Because we probably got, there was 12 people here, and we know a lot more live over there than 12. So is there a way we can approve it with the contingency that we at least go out and hold some kind of meeting with these folks that didn't make it this evening? I know they got letters, but I'm wondering how many got letters that live up on the ridge.
Nobody.
Unless they're a property owner, they probably didn't get a letter.
They're not a property owner in the project area, so we did not send them letters. The letters
Well-
only went to the property owners within the project area.
Well, they'll be impacted.
Not necessarily by the CRA. The
They'd be
development may impact them, but the CRA won't. But as we said, the development side is on the city side.
Right.
That's a city process, not a redevelopment process. And as the mayor clearly indicated in the meeting, when the city is ready to start that discussion on the development process, there will be plenty of opportunity for those property owners outside of this to become involved in that process of what should or should not be placed on that property. Again, we're creating a project area for a incentive tool. And we heard from property owners within that project area that did get notices.
How many?
There were 10 property owners within that project area. 83 acres, and there's 10 property owners within that 83 acres. but we did not, because we didn't include any of the residential areas, we didn't notice them. They're not part of the plan.
That's right. That'll be a part of the
The
city.
development will, that's when you can go on the Bryan Road show.
Well, and I think we talked about workshops. I think we basically have to get this message out.
Town hall meetings,
Participation, yeah,
neighborhood
town hall
meetings.
This is important, and I think we need to hear the voice of the people.
Well,
I'm wondering, so sorry,
No,
I didn't mean
go
to.
ahead.
So before we kind of went, because we've got a east and a west side, because we've got it divided by the tracks. So.
Basically.
Yeah, so we've got that kind of divide there. I mean, I was on the planning commission when UTA was coming in and proposed all of the rail stations. And it was promised, oh my gosh, how many years ago have I been doing this? Anyway, years ago, that yes, we were supposed to have what you claimed, yeah. And none of that happened, ever, you know? And so now it's like, I'm a little disappointed going again. They've already hit their 8. So now it's like, okay, now nothing's gonna happen again. I don't feel at this time, this is just me, but I don't feel at this time that we need to pull in the west side. I think at this time we only need to adjust it for the UTA side or the east side. That includes the UTA side and the Wilton property, and not taking the west side at this time. Because I don't feel like anything until that property gets going. I know that there's been some developers that have kind of come in and wanted to build some things, but really their anticipation is something going with the rail station. That they wanted to build a walkway over it so that people could walk from going from the rail station over to where they lived. Well, if nothing's going at the rail station, then no property owner is going to build, because why do this walkway if there's no, I don't know. Me personally, I want to take out the west side and just have the east side and the Wilson property.
And that is your right as a redevelopment agency board, based upon the public comments that you have received. If you would wish to amend the project area boundaries, you have the right to do that. So in this case, we would, when we got ready to make a motion to approve the resolution, we would make a resolution would be with an amended project area that would include the following. And then what we do, just go
Now, could we later, if we felt like maybe something legislation changed or something, or could
we take it out,
could we always create
a new
another
one.
C?
Yes, we can
All right,
always
for
create
the west side.
We could do one of two things. We can always create a CRA, a new one, or we can come back and amend the existing one to include that property, and then again, we go through this process that we've gone through for the last couple of months.
The only dilemma is, of the people that were here, only one asked to be removed, and now everybody just left. You're going to remove people that think they're in it now.
That's true, because, and again, what.
Potter was the only one that asked to be removed
But
here.
what we could do is we could reach out back to them again and ask them, but we did have one property owner that did specifically request to have his property removed. And my recommendation would be we honor that request and we remove that property from that project area. And then I think we could even open it up that we could send another, there's a 30-day protest period. I've done this before. We can send letters to those west side property owners and say, okay, if you want to be out, you need to send us a letter and tell us you want to be out. If we need to do that. But the other property owner that did speak, he did say, because I turned to him and asked him, and he said, I'm okay for now.
Right.
That was
That's
Mr.
Right.
Wheatland.
Right, I mean, but Brian, I mean, your concern, I mean, I'm just talking here and, you know, it was just an idea that I was having, you know, while everything was going on. Because your concern too is we didn't hear from everybody, so you've got all that property side there, you know, agreeing. Now, if we do something that Randy's saying, if we do a 30-day, that gives us that time frame for those property owners to let us know whether they, I don't know.
If you approve it, it goes into a 30-day protest area, or protest period.
The law requires that once we adopt the ordinances, then we have to publish in the paper a notice that we adopted a project area by ordinance. And that notice then says that anybody that would wish to protest or would wish to, has 30 days to inform us. And then after 30 days, it becomes official and it's final, and they lose their opportunity to do so.
Right, and I understand this process, and I know it's not, there's no intimate domain. I know that this just gives us, if everything is approved, it just gives us that little bit of, the incentive to be able to help, with, a development area. I just always wanted to see just that section of the UTA area being developed. I don't know.
Well, let me just make a comment, and it's obviously not all the property owners are here now, but the fact of the matter is, and I think you made this very clear, Randy, if in fact a developer decides and comes in and says there's value in that property, one of the things that may make that property more valuable for the developer is the fact it is in a CRA. And having it be in a CRA gives them then maybe more opportunities to bring more value to the property if they choose to sell it to a developer.
That's correct, and the reason I would be hesitant to remove those, only those that wanted to be done, is because of this simple fact. When something happens on that UTA property, somebody or someone is going to want to go over and approach that other side and talk about, would you be interested to do something right now? And if they don't want to do it, if they want to stay there for the rest of their lives and don't want to do anything, that's great, that's their choice. They haven't lost anything. But I think it opens up an opportunity, and I can tell you for fact, I have had project areas where we adjusted boundaries. We took property owners out, and I can tell you, they came back to us in 10 years. 10 years later, it wasn't 5, it was 10 years later. One was 15. And said, the father died. The one that did the protest, he was gone. The family needed to sell that property. They had a developer, but they had a certain price.
It's kind of what I was
They
talking about.
begged us. They begged us. I couldn't do anything about it. I said, I'm sorry. I apologize. 20 years is a long time. And all I'm saying is, I do think we need to honor people that don't want to be part of it.
I agree with
But
that.
I think that if we had people that, and we did, every property owner had an opportunity to come and ask to be out. The property owners did get the letters. And I know we said the letter was kind of hard to read, but we try to simplify that. But that's why we really encourage, when we put in there, call us so we can sit down and talk with you and get through these. And I wish more property owners would take advantage of that. But with that being said, I would recommend that we not amend that to just go to the UTA property. We leave it as it is, but we do eliminate from the project area Mr. Potter's property, because he requested that to be done.
In a public meeting.
In a public meeting.
But in the 30 days, maybe the question, Matt, is you receive those inputs. If there's something that's changed in the next 30 days, is there a way by which the RDA board could be made aware, of maybe more people interested in?
Yes, we can always, that's the good thing. We can always come back and amend to take property out.
Right.
Okay, we can always do that. And that could happen a year from now. If a property owner approached us anytime and said, look, I really would feel better if you take me out of this project area, we'd bring that back to the board and say, are you willing to amend this? And do you want to eliminate this property? And in most cases, I think the RDA board would say, you know what, if they don't want to be part of it, we're not here to force them to be part of it. Let's take them out.
So what's the language I've got to state to get that half acre in there and?
All you'll need to do is that you will, I think the easy motion would be that you approve the resolution with the amendment to section 2. Oh, well, let me get the right one. I thought it 2. To section 2 with the legal description of the project area boundaries being amended to eliminate the Potter property and to include the Wilson parcel as discussed in the public hearing.
Okay. Any other comments before we go ask for a motion?
Can I just ask, when you're doing this now, I mean, if it is approved, then it goes to that 30-day, what do you call it?
30-day challenge period is what it's really called.
And is that the point at which the taxing entities would be involved, or is that?
No, we'll be to the taxing entities. What what we're looking for is we're kind of trying to get an idea of what a budget would be. We have a budget, and we feel very comfortable of taking this budget to the taxing entities and having the taxing entities approve this budget. However, what we want to make sure we do is we don't want to have to come back and ask them for more money if something should happen.
Okay, so you're telling me you're maybe at step 7?
We're probably at step 7.
Just even if you approved it tonight, it's not saying that it's a done deal?
No, it is not a done deal. It will not be a done deal. There are 3 major things that have to happen for it to be a done deal. And the real big one is we have to go back to we have to go to taxing entities and ask them to participate in the terms that we want. That's number 1. And then the second thing that obviously has to happen, we have to have a development so we know that our budget's fairly accurate. The law says when I come to you, we have to bring a budget for you to approve and adopt. But that budget can be amended at any time during the process. And we've already communicated with taxing entities, the bigger ones, that, hey, we're doing this, we've got a budget, but we may want to wait 30 to 60 days before we come and approach you for participation, because that number might change.
Well, when you say we have to have a development, what do you mean by that?
Well, we need to have somebody come in and propose a development so that we know what it
So
is.
you wouldn't even set a CRA in place until you have a development proposed?
No. We create the CRA so it's in place so when a developer walks in, we're ready to start negotiating terms and conditions and all that other stuff. Our budget, and I feel pretty good about this budget. I feel really good about this budget because this budget, what we did is we looked at how many acres could be developed, particularly on the UTA property. We figured out what that density could be, okay? And that's the other thing. The density will have to be approved by the city council. And so when you get that opportunity, like the mayor said, when these things come back to you, you set what it can be there, our numbers may change. It may be less tax increment than what we projected if you don't approve the same density that we looked at. We've looked at 20 units per acre. That's what we used our budget for. But if you come back and say, we only want 5 units per acre, well, that changes our whole budget. So that's what I'm trying to say is, in this case, we could take the budget that we've got to the taxing entities and have them approve it. And then if we found out that it changed, we can go back and ask them to amend it. But it's been my experience, they don't like that. When you go once, they want to know what it is, they want to be approved, and they want to be done. They don't like you coming back 5-6 years later and saying, hey, we have to change things. So in this case, with this budget, I feel good. But if it were to allow a density up to 20 units per acre.
So
this budget could work.
Solidifying that information may have more to do about any changes that the city council approves in terms of the general plan amendment that's moving through.
Right.
So I think once the general plan amendment has been solidified,
then we are prepared to go to the taxing entities and have our budget approved. And that's going to happen within 60 days, possibly?
Well, Matt seems to think if we get the planning commission to get the public hearings and get all that done, the city council could see within the next 2 months, maybe 3 months, they will see that for approval.
Okay,
Go ahead.
questions. Just first of all, we know now that some of these property owners, Randy, have already been approached by developers, according to what they spoke. So this project's going to move probably pretty quick.
But I don't know if those were recent or not.
No. What the property owners talked about, and I think Matt alluded to this a little bit about the fact, there's a development being proposed on the south end?
South end.
South end. But that development can't happen until there's a road. And what these property owners were concerned about is somebody went out and told these property owners that this process is going to allow you to condemn that property for that road, which was a false statement.
Right.
Okay, that's false, and we wanted to clarify that with those property owners that that was a false statement. So, if that development happens, we haven't agreed to give them any tax increment. They have to come back to us and talk to us about it. And we don't know if we would even participate in a project like that. So what I'm trying to say is, again, the focus for us, for this project area, is the UTA parcel.
How do we?
That's a
how do
25,
we,
that's 30
as
acres.
city leaders, prevent the Roy project from looking like the Layton and Clearfield project? Because all they are is just
You vote against it when it's presented to you in the city council?
No, you do it before that. You are going to have a great opportunity as a city council to have brought back to you what it is you want done in that area. You get to set that terms.
But can't we do that without the CRA?
Well, yes, you can do it without the CRA. That's what I'm trying to say. You have to separate. Separate in your minds these two processes. You're confusing them. You have a city process, which is planning, zoning, code, ordinance, development. That all is on the city side. General plan, form-based code, all of that's a city process. The RDA process is setting up an area that can be an incentive area to help the area develop the way you want it to do. So what you're going to do, the two-step process is simply this. Once you have decided on the city side what you want the project to look like, how much density, what types of materials, what kind of landscaping, how much grass, how much asphalt, when you go through all of that, okay? Now you've set what a developer has to come into. So if the developer comes into us and says, I want to build a project, and I would like you to give me the increment that will come off that project, then we can say, fine, you have to build the project the way the city has said you have to build a project, or we're not working with you.
And what's really important about this conversation, Brian, so there's no confusion, a CRA approval process will take months. What the decision when a form-based code or the general plan is put in front of the city council, the moment they basically approve it, it is now the law. So the point is that this was an effort to try to get ahead of that, to simply put all of the tools in place so that in fact the opportunity is there once the city council decides how they want these properties to look like. And that will take place on the general plan amendment that's coming at you.
We would, Mr. Saxon, we wouldn't even entertain a development proposal until this is done.
It has to be.
We can't even do that. We cannot even entertain a project until it's gone through the city development side.
The two that we're being referred to here is there's a 10-acre parcel sitting partway down in the middle between the tracks and the trail. The landowner is an Arizona company. And the interesting part is 2 different developers have come in and says, I want to put townhouses at that location. One came in probably 4 years ago. The other one came in about 6 months ago. And the point is that in both cases, the issue to make that successful is that the developer needed to find a solution, okay, to that road. And the first one had a solution, but the city council at the time felt they did not believe was in the best interest of the city.
Isn't that out the back of the cul-de-sac?
Well,
Yeah, back down there.
Yeah.
yeah, they basically believe that it's not in the best interest to basically do high-density residential at that location. And that, 4 votes to 1, that project was terminated, okay? The cost of the developer was about $10,000, what I heard him pay to get that to the city council. That's a lot of money.
I heard considerably more than that.
Was it?
I heard 50.
See, that's
I was
what
told
I like the
10,000.
UTA side.
But the point would be is that was 4 years ago. 6 months ago, another developer came in and wanted to do the same thing at that location. So the point is, if they were stacked up and rolling in, that would be one thing. They're not. We just happen to have a couple of offers in here over the last 4 or 5 years that show some interest in that. This could change that. This could change that. But it can't be changed until the city council decides what does it want to look like when it grows up. And you will make that decision. Let me repeat that. You will make that decision.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve Resolution 1919 9, approving and adopting the DRG Community Reinvestment Project with the amendment to eliminate the Potter property and include the Wilson property discussed in the meeting.
Okay, have a motion. Do I have a second? I'll ask one more time. Do I have a motion? I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Okay. In absence?
Make a motion, we adjourn. We're done.
Okay, in absence of a second on the resolution 19-9, and with that resolution 19-10, we'll basically, we drop it with lack of a motion.
Well, let me explain now what happens.
Unless we do.
We don't have a project area created, and what we'll need to do is, when the council or the redevelopment agency's board is ready to have a discussion on this particular project area,
start over.
You'll let the staff know, and we will not need to, unless we change the boundaries, which I don't think we are proposing to do, we would not necessarily have to have another public hearing, but we'd have to bring back and bring those to you. There is a statute of limitations, though, and I've got to figure out what that is. I need to check with my RDA attorney of how long do we have, do we need to bring it back. If we don't do it within that statute of limitations, we just don't have a project area, and we start from the beginning.
I'd even entertain a motion to table this if we in fact still have questions that need to be asked.
I'll
But
make a motion.
Does tabling it do anything for us?
No, tabling it's not going to do anything to us because
Why
we
not?
still have to come back and adopt the resolutions and the ordinance. Because right now, we've gone to step 5. We've created,
Well-
we did the plan, we did the budget, we held the public hearing, and now the next steps were for you as a council or an RDA board to make the decision. And by not passing the resolutions, the decision is you don't want to move forward with the project area.
Yeah, but tabling gives us 30 days.
No, there's no, tabling's not going to give us any time. You can come back, you have the right to say, if you want to, you can say, let's put this back on an RDA agenda in the next 30 days, and we can bring it back for additional discussion. So you just need to let us know when you want to bring this back for discussion.
Randy, my biggest concern is going to be is that a lot of time and effort has been put into this to get to the public comment period. This is resolution 1919. I need to just make sure we understand. Failure to get a second means, as far as I'm concerned, it's dead.
That is correct.
Okay, so if it's dead, to restart, we go through the whole process of advertisement, we go through the whole process again if we want to do this again.
My recommendation would be this. We need to know the reason why they don't want to adopt it. What's your reason you don't want to adopt the resolution?
I just want to just deal with the east side
Okay,
right
so
now.
you're.
And I understand that it doesn't hurt us to add the west side in.
Okay.
There's no, it's, add them in, it's fine with property. I just don't feel at this time that dealing with that right now is our best interest. I feel our best interest is to deal with the east side, with UTA property.
And my concern is that I don't want to see us drop an apartment unit complex in the center of Roy. Period. I just don't,
And
believe
you
it.
think creating the project area does that?
I think it could, yes, based on my experience as a reporter, based on my experience on this very issue. Yes, I do. I've seen what Clearfield did, and I've seen what Layton did, and it's a lot of units. And if you don't know what I'm talking, I know you do.
Then vote against the zoning when the zoning comes up. The CRA has nothing to do with the zoning.
Yeah, but why do I kick that wheel down the hill?
I need to check with outside counsel. I think, Mayor, I think because we completed the public hearing, and unless we're going to add any new property to the project area, I don't know if we have to go back to the public hearing. I think all we'll need to do is come back and address just adopting those resolutions. But I'm going to verify that and then I'll send out an email. But basically, by you not taking action on the plan is not adopted. We have not adopted anything. So we're kind of back to square one in the sense that we haven't adopted anything.
Yeah,
But I
so
don't
we can
know if we
readjust
need to
it.
do everything with the process. I don't know if we need to have
Okay.
another public hearing. I think maybe we might be able to do is if we bring it back and just have a debate about, maybe we need to have a work session to talk about what these boundaries should be. And then once we know what that's going to be, we can determine if we want to adopt it. But you are right. Right now, technically, this project area is dead.
Right.
We didn't adopt it, so it doesn't exist.
Right.
And we won't go through, we won't.
My
we
opinion, we
won't
should
do-
restart over if we want to do anything with that property.
And we have, that's absolutely, we can restart over by, and I think that's a good point. We would probably, because of the comments we heard from the property owners, we probably want to have another public hearing. And we probably want to have input, particularly if we're going to adjust the boundaries.
And
Okay,
we
then here's what I would recommend. I need a
want
motion
input
to adjourn the
the people that
RDA
live on the
board.
ridge.
I make a motion that we adjourn the RDA board meeting.
Do I have a second? Thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I want to go back in and make a motion to go back into city council.
Okay, make the motion, we go back into city council meeting.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thanks, we're back in the city council. Now, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, do I have a second? Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Good day, good discussion, thank you. We'll just notify you people that it's, until such time that it's not.
Well, yeah.